Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have a couple of proclamations. The first one is National Travel and Tourism Week, presented by me. So if you're here for that proclamation, please come forward. I see your face. I see your face. Just hanging there. You're hanging there. Work with me. Work with me. It is really a big group. This is amazing. I'm already excited. I need a good news today. There you go. Come forward. Don't be shy. All right. So again, good afternoon. My name is Natalie Fanny Gonzalez, and it is such a pleasure to be here today with the people who make sure that Montgomery County is in the map, that people understand the beautiful things that we have in this county and the quality of life that we offer and the opportunities that we have. So I am thrilled that we are celebrating National Travel and Tourism Week and the incredible role tourism players make, like every single one of you. Tourism is more than travel. It is a source of culture, community, and connection. From our urban centers to our ag reserve, every year, millions of visitors come to Montgomery County and support local businesses, restaurants, hotels, and attractions that make our community special. I know there is an important Tastemakers event coming up, and I'm sure you're going to mention. So I will mention that Taste of Wheaton is happening on June 7th. And we have Restaurant Week coming up. You can visit wheatonmaryland.org for more information. But there's always something exciting going on, and it does reflect the culture, but also the values that we have in our community to embrace who we are and loving our differences, because that's one of the reasons why Montgomery County is so awesome. So with that, I'm going to ask Ms. Kelly Ruff, the President and CEO of Visit Montgomery, to share a few words.
Thank you, Council President Fanny Gonzalez. I'm joined by some great community partners behind me today. Some are board members, some are business owners, some are business managers. Two of our venues that generate the most hotel room nights in the county are with us today. The Maryland Soccerplex welcomes over 1 million visitors a year, and our beloved Bethesda North Marriott Hotel and Conference Center are here today. The tourism industry is a $2 billion industry for Montgomery County. We welcome 9 million visitors a year. We're a revenue generator, and we just finished our strategic plan, looking forward to the future and helping to continue to develop a great quality of place and bring revenues to Montgomery County. So thank you, Council President Fanny Gonzalez, and also to all the partners who came today and took time out of their day to be part of this process. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And honestly, and I don't do this often, but for this group, I will. If you can please say who you are and where you're coming from, that would be great.
Maria Vardas with Visit Montgomery.
Adam Murphy, Monami Gabi.
Stephanie Oslander, Communications Manager, Visit Montgomery.
Catherine Cross, Destination Sales Manager, Visit Montgomery.
Lee Calicut, Senior Destination Sales Manager, Visit Montgomery.
Eric Rosh, Board Member, Visit Montgomery.
Matt Libber, Maryland Soccerplex.
Joe Doran, Visit Montgomery, Community Engagement and Partnership Manager.
Robert Luttrell, Bethesda North Marriott.
Caitlin Track, Marketing Intern at Visit Montgomery.
Letitia Engel, Manager of Marketing Communications. Visit Montgomery.
David Child, General Manager of the Bethesda North Marriott Hotel and Conference Center, and also a board member of Visit Montgomery.
Cindy Rivard with Rockville Economic Development, and I'm a board member at Visit Montgomery.
Natalia Bob, Montgomery College.
Thank you. Cara Rico, the Bethesda North Marriott Hotel and Conference Center.
Brad Lang, General Manager, Bethesda Marriott.
Kimberly Walter, Maryland Soccerplex.
Madden Milner, Maryland Soccerplex.
Bring so much value that I thought it was important to say who you are. And something, just because we have the folks from Soccerplex here, I want to mention is that the folks from Visit Montgomery have been so key in the sport tourism workforce that we put together to ensure that people understand that sports is a $1 billion industry, and we have so much potential, so many things happening in Montgomery County that uplifting that work and ensuring that we step up to the next stage is key. And I look forward to the results of that task force at some point this year. One of the key tasks that this task force has is creating a multi-use facility in the county for conventions, competitions, but also high school graduations. Because if you have a kid in high school, guess what? Those graduations don't happen here. We don't have the space. And so that's one of the key things that we're doing. And you have done such an amazing job there, the two of you. So thank you for that. I'm going to read the proclamation right now. And it says, the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland proclamation. Whereas National Travel and Tourism Week, celebrated May 3rd to the 9th, 2026, recognizes the essential role of travel and tourism in strengthening communities and supporting local economies. And whereas this year's theme, Postmarked Essential, highlights the industrial vital contributions to our workforce in daily life. And whereas tourism in Montgomery County generates $2.2 billion in annual economic impact, welcomes 9 million visitors, and produces $23 million in hotel tax revenue and $640 million in food and beverage spending. And whereas Visit Montgomery plays a key role in this success through its leadership in destination marketing, community partnerships, and efforts to elevate the county's diverse attractions and visitor experiences. Now, therefore, be resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland, hereby proclaims May 3rd to the 9th, 2026 as National Travel and Tourism Week in Montgomery County, and encourages recognition in the industry's essential contributions in the outstanding work of Visit Montgomery, presented on this 5th day of May in the year of 2026, signed by Council President Natalie Fanny Gonzalez. And I'm going to say this right now. You guys, I have protected your budget during Econ, and I'm going to continue doing so because you guys are vital for the economy of this county. And this is, for me, this is not just a proclamation. It's something that I want you to hear that from me, that I appreciate your work, and we're going to do everything we can to protect you in such a tough budget that we have this year. With that, I'm going to give you this. And let's take a photo. The second proclamation today is recognizing Education Appreciation Week by the County Council Education and Culture Committee with the County Executive. If you're here for that proclamation, please come forward.
Wonderful. Thank you. Come on down to all our great educators and supporters of educators. Good afternoon to everybody. I'm Councilmember Will Jawando, Chair of the Education and Culture Committee, joined by my colleagues on the committee, Councilmember Mink and Councilmember Evans. We also have a number of folks here. I think the county executive cannot attend, but I think Assistant Chief Administrative Officer Luisa Cardona is here or on her way. You are here. She is right behind me. We have the superintendent, Dr. Thomas Taylor. I know we have the president of the school board, Grace Rivera Oven, in school board member Laura Stewart, and Natalie Zimmerman. Anyone else from the school board? Okay, got all the school board members. We've got David Stein, head of MCEA, and several of his staff and members. Kyle Heat Wole. Where's Kyle? Okay, did I say that right? Heat Wall. Okay, there we go. Heat Wall. You'll hear from him shortly. Dr. Robinson. Is Dr. Robinson here? Okay, I don't see Dr. Robinson. Dr. Gillian. There we go. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your voices. There's some of our great educators who you're going to hear from. Some have heard me tell this story before, but when I was at 4th grade in Oakview Elementary, it was my third school that I had been to, and I was a new student. And I was very nervous, and I was a little chubby, and I was dealing with bullying and self-confidence, as a lot of kids that age are. And I met a teacher my first day, my math teacher, Mr. Williams. His name was Chuck Williams. And he came in, and he had a suit and tie and a leather satchel. He sat it on the desk. In this room of about 30 Black and Latino students, immediately shut up. He commanded presence. He's the first African-American man I had seen wear a tie to work every day. Before the end of the school year, he actually taught me how to tie a tie and gave me my first tie, which I still have. I didn't know his backstory, but I would find out later, and researching for a book that I wrote that he's in, that this was his second job. He flew helicopter pilot. He was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam as a captain in the U.S. Army, retired from that job, and then became an elementary math teacher in MCPS, and came into my life for 9 months and changed it, as well as the other students in that class. One of the many, many examples of educators who every day are stepping up, changing lives of our students and our families, and helping them figure out what they want to do and navigate a whole multitude of issues and learn. And I often remind people, even though it was a 4th grade math class, it was also a civil rights class. It was a grammar class. It was a, communication class. It was everything else too. And I think about him often, but especially this week. And you're going to hear from some great educators today. They need our support. They need our support. It has become more difficult to teach, more difficult to assist our students and families. And they need us to step up for them. And this week is important because you get to appreciate them. I think the best way we can appreciate them is by making sure they have the supports they need to support our students and families. So thank you for that one clap. I appreciate it. But I know everyone agrees. So we're going to hear from my colleagues on the committee, and then we will hear from a couple of our great educators. And we're joined by board member Julie Yang as well. So first I'll start with over my left shoulder, Councilmember Kristen Mink, and then Councilmember Evans.
Thank you to everybody here today, and thank you. And thank you to everybody who can't be here because you are in our schools, in our classrooms, hard at work, supporting our students and our families. As a former teacher myself, I taught for about 10 years, including in MCPS. This is an event that means a lot to me, as does the work that we do as a council and as a county to support our schools and support those who make it run. Teachers had such a formative impact on my life. It is the teachers that I loved that made me want to be a teacher. Every year I fell in love with my teacher, and I told them, I'm gonna be a preschool teacher when I grow up, and then I'm gonna be a kindergarten teacher when I grow up. I'm gonna be a first grade, and so on. Eventually I did settle down primarily in middle school, where the kids are just a special kind of personality. And I loved it. And I remember so vividly so many experiences that I had with many of my different teachers that went beyond academics, as the chair was noting. And all of those pieces that are needed in order to support my academic development. You know, teachers who saw when I was upset about something. I remember a teacher catching me in the hallway and finding out that I had just gotten the news that my grandmother had passed away, and all of the supports that quickly went into play and, you know, wrapped me up for, you know, that day and the days to come, the communications with my family, the ability for me to come and go as I needed from my classes throughout the day, to go check in with the counselors who somehow were providing those supports to me, and to all the other students around the building who were going through their own independent moments and crises, but somehow making me feel important, valued, and supported. And that was what allowed me to continue going through my own educational journey at the same time. So I so thank everybody who is hard at work on behalf of our students, who is providing those moments. At getting to return the favor as a teacher was incredibly meaningful. I will note, students who used their correct pronoun in my classroom. They were not using it anywhere else, and how impactful that was for them. And I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to do that. So for all of the many moments that are unfolding in our schools that we don't see, but that take a lot, we are deeply grateful and glad to be here to recognize that formally today and in the work that is to follow.
Good afternoon and happy Appreciation Week. It gives me pride to be able to celebrate you all in this way, since my kids are no longer in MCPS. I don't have cards or gifts to send off to them to the classroom. So this is a really great way to just say thank you. My husband and I moved here over 23 years ago for the public school system here in Montgomery County, and I was very fortunate to serve 8 years on the school board. So I really do value all of the educators, everyone in the school system. You are doing more than educating our students, and oftentimes you're being nurses and counselors and grandparents. You're partnering with our families, so it's deeply appreciated. What I do know is that you go above and beyond your regular assigned duties that are in your contract. But I just wanted to publicly acknowledge you all and say thank you, that we could not do this work without you. You help to ensure that all of our students, as they leave high school, they graduate from the public school system, that they're equipped to do whatever it is that they might do, whether that's go on to college or go on to their career. So we can't thank you enough. We hope that you feel valued, that you know you're appreciated, not just this week, but just all throughout the year. So this is my way on behalf of the council to say thank you and to acknowledge you today and every day.
All right, let's hear from some of these great educators and their representatives. First, we're going to hear from David Stein, who is the head of the union, represents all of our Montgomery County Educators Association. David Stein.
Thank you, Chair Jawando and Council Member Mink and Evans. Thank you. On behalf of the 14,000 educators that I work with and I represent, we appreciate the words and we appreciate the proclamation, because those 14,000 educators who are right now, even as we speak, in the classrooms, in their buildings, work sites, in students' homes, they are miracle workers. They are performing miracles every day. They are meeting students with all sorts of challenges. They are nurturing them. They are loving them. They are inspiring them. They are educating them, even in the conditions that we face, with underfunded schools, with buildings that are really falling apart in many cases. They're doing the work. And in our nation's environment, in which teachers are under attack, in which unions are under attack. And so teachers' unions are really under attack. And it's in that environment that our teachers and our educators every single day are performing miracles. And so we really do appreciate the words that you're saying. But I have to say that for a lot of my members, for most of my members, these words they see these words as hollow. When you are at the same time giving sincere words of appreciation, when at the same time you're considering budget scenarios that may devastate our schools. They ring hollow, our members. When at one hand you're decrying Donald Trump, for firing public educators, for firing public employees, but at the same time, you're considering budget scenarios that will force the school board into a situation where we have to fire public employees. It rings hollow. When on the one hand, you're decrying Donald Trump attacking public employee unions, when at the same time, you're having budget scenarios that are going to force the school board to look at our collective bargaining agreements. And so that's why, yes, we appreciate the words, but the words are not enough. And we need this council members. We need this council to stand up to those words, to do what's right for our students, for our educators, for the schools. Find a budget solution that supports the crown jewel of Montgomery County, which is MCPS. So thank you very much for the words, Chair.
All right, thank you very much, David. We're going to hear from Kyle Heatwall, principal at Flora Singer Elementary School. And I also remind Educator Week, we incorporate all of our, including the instructional leaders in the building. So.
Well, thank you. Yes, as we call it at my school, it's Teacher and School Staff Appreciation Week, because we don't want anyone to feel unrecognized or unvalued this week, because everybody's work is so important in what we do for children. And I don't know if any of my SEIU colleagues are here, but I always take a quick moment just to also recognize all of our SEIU colleagues, but I always feel like our bus drivers and bus attendants don't receive the recognition that they deserve. For so many of our families, they are the face of MCPS. That is the face they see in the morning and the face they see at the end of the day. So I just want to give them a quick shout out. But I am here to represent my fellow school administrators. I was asked to be here by my colleagues in McBoa. And on behalf of all of us, I just want to thank the Board of Education and the County Council for their continued support. I will admit that was a little bit of a tough act to follow. So I guess I'll just say I am completing my 18th year as an MCPS principal, first a principal of Rockview Elementary School, and the past 14 years as principal of Flora Singer Elementary School in Silver Spring. And certainly things have changed quite a bit during those 18 years. And the things that we are dealing with now it's a unique landscape than where we were 18 years ago. But our commitment is unwavering. Our commitment to our students, to their education, to their well-being, to their basic needs, and above all else, to their safety, which is seemingly more important than ever. And I just, again, want to thank the continued partnership from our Board of Ed and our County Council as we strive to meet that commitment. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kyle. And last but not least, we have Abba. Is that you? Yes, come on over. A family engagement specialist and a member of SEIU. So come on in. How low do I need to go? There you go.
Thank you in so many different ways on behalf of all the families of Montgomery County Public School from pre-K to 12th grade. As you heard, our name is Family Engagement Specialist, just as it describes itself. Our role is to make sure that Montgomery County provides educational access to all families, no matter what challenges they may face, and their ability to follow up with their children's education, to check with the teachers, everything that has to do with a child, from enrollment until graduation. We are involved, not just for the at-risk students, but for all students in any building. We work with students, families, but we work with the teachers, the administrators, the counselors, the personnel workers, anyone that has anything to do with those children. We try to connect them to the parents, so the parents truly are partners, not just in words, but in action. Well, how does that affect the child? If the parents are not involved, the home front is not actively playing a role, a teacher is trying to do what they can do, but the other half is missing. So I think our role, it cannot be put into any capsulized words. It is critical, and MCPS knows it. And the origin of our office, even though it has been in existence in so many different ways, well organized and supported by the County Council in 2006, when community reached out. It was a partnership between the County Council and Montgomery County Public School. They created an office with the intention of focusing and serving the underserved communities. Today, with technology saying parent view, QR code, portal this and portal that, we're needed even more. And then in the current situation, when many families, it doesn't matter where they come from, they could move here from another part of the world or from Tennessee, they still need us to connect them to their teachers. The teachers can't do it all on their own. The counselors cannot do anything and everything on their own. Everybody is having to do more. Our role is to be the connector. So if you look at us as the ring that connects everybody to everything and everyone that has to do with that child, please support our growth, not our shrinking of this service to the families. If your child is sitting next to a parent who cannot do what you can do, then please support our presence to be there if MCPS is to do what it promises to do. Dr. Taylor and the board are aware of this. What's missing is budget. So budget is up to you. Thank you.
And I skipped, last but not least now, Dr. Jillian, Director of the Paul Peck Humanities Institute and Professor of English at Montgomery College. And we love our Montgomery College educators too. And then we'll read the proclamation.
Good afternoon. I have the privilege of representing Montgomery College here today. I came directly from the classroom to be here with you all, and this is such an honor to be able to speak about how important it is for our educators to be recognized. I would say that the educators that I have come in contact with at Montgomery College over the past 14 years of service, we are mission focused. We believe in the mission of Montgomery College as an open access identity, and that open access yields incredible results in our students, and that they have transformational outcomes as a result of the experiences, the opportunities that they get at MC. And we stay as educators at Montgomery College because of that mission, and because we get the opportunity to help so many of our students who may not otherwise have the opportunities that Montgomery County affords them. It's important to continue to support our students. Needs are always high, but this is a really challenging season for our students as they juggle not only our local and national context, but they're also trying to figure out what is their way, what is their path, and sometimes with populations who are discriminated against. And we have one of the most diverse populations in the nation, and I'm really proud of that fact. And please continue to support the wonderful work that we get to do at Montgomery College every day. Thank you.
All right, my colleagues, join me. We're going to read the proclamation and take a picture. Whereas the vital role that all professionals play in learning environments is recognized with a diverse network of skilled and dedicated educators supporting learning at every level, and
whereas school administrators are recognized as the leaders within a school whose charge is to uplift staff and students and to build a strong infrastructure for learning, and whose expertise can transform schools into safe and thriving communities. And
whereas teachers are also celebrated concurrently with Teacher Appreciation Week, honoring the skilled facilitators of discovery and development at all levels who foster learning across all academic fields, support the social, emotional, and physical well-being of students, and strengthen the overall school community. And
whereas educational support professionals create an environment where learning can take place by feeding students, maintaining safe and clean facilities, transporting students to and from school and extracurricular activities, maintaining secure school environments, and coordinating main office responsibilities, making them a vital part of the educational ecosystem. And
whereas all other contributors to the educational environment, including school nurses, counselors, psychologists, substitute teachers, central staff members, volunteers, administrators, and many others, play critical roles in fostering the overall well-being and success of students. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the county executive, the Education and Culture Committee, and the entire Council of Montgomery County hereby proclaim the week of May 4th as Education Appreciation Week and celebrate these dedicated professionals, thank them for their service, and encourage all residents to acknowledge and appreciate educators and support staff for their dedication and commitment to education. Presented on this day, the 5th of May, the year 2026, signed by the County Executive, Mark Elrich, and the Council President on behalf of the entire Council. Happy Education Appreciation Week. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today. We're going to move on with our agenda. Item 4 is a public hearing in action on a resolution approve. Let's miscorrect. Supplemental appropriation 26-43 to the FY26 operating budget. Montgomery County Government, Department of Transportation, Streets and Roads, Roadside Trees Protection for $100,050. Source of funds, Street Tree Planting Fund. Council action is scheduled immediately following this hearing. There are not speakers for this hearing. This public hearing is now closed. And now the council will consider action on this item. Is there a motion to approve supplemental appropriation 26-43? Moved by Council President Balcon. Can I get a second? No. Second by Council Member Glass. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And it passed unanimously. We will return to our work sessions on the FY27 operating budget and FY27-32 capital improvements program. We are now on letter L, Office of Procurement. If anyone that came to the item, please move forward. I see Dr. Shetty here, and I'm going to turn it to the chair of the GO committee, Chair Stewart.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you to Director Shetty and his whole team. The GO committee reviewed the FY27 budget requests for the procurement office. It's pretty much a same service budget. There is one item that was placed on the reconciliation list. It is an e-procurement item in the amount of $816,170. This was an item that was requested last year, and the GO committee reviewed it. We asked that the director share more information for the full council on what the e-procurement system would do and how the department currently handles things, because they don't have this system. And colleagues, you can see that at Circle 11. Again, this is also one-time money to set up this system. And I do want to also acknowledge that this office received an OBIT score of 11, which is the highest score a department can receive. And so I just want to thank them for all their work on those issues. And that is it.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask council staff if there's anything else.
Nothing from me. It's the same idea that you've heard this morning, using technology to improve the efficiency and the impact of the operations of the department. So it's a tough decision you have to make.
Thank you so much. I don't see anybody else wanting to speak. With that, we have a recommendation from the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee. Those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, I see it. It passed unanimously. We're going to move on to item M. Thank you for coming. It's been a long day, so. Conference and Visitors Bureau non-departmental account. Those coming for that item, please come forward. Conference, I see council staff coming in. This is an item that the Econ Committee reviewed. And I see Mr. Balal ready to go. And I'm just buying time as my computer froze. Oh, man. Ms. Kelly Grove, I know you're here. You can come forward. Yes. There you are. From Visit Montgomery, we just recognize their amazing work. Thank you for being here. So the Economic Development Committee agreed with the county executive recommendation, but did not vote on the 2.5, and that's with everybody, the inflationary adjustment. The council staff highlighted a potential reduction for consideration that will have resulted in savings. But we did not want to support that as a committee, but I felt like I had to say that here because we are focused on reductions. It's on the first page of the report. It's for almost $1 million. And I'm going to turn it to Ms. Kelly Grove, if you can speak about your work, and because that will reflect why the committee felt that way. And I have said, as I have said during the proclamation, I think the work that you guys do is critical to ensure that it's not just about bringing visitors, but it's about economic development and ensuring that more people see Montgomery County as a place not just to live, but also to work and to come and spend their money at our beautiful restaurants and so on. So I'm going to turn it to you so you can explain your budget.
Thank you, Council President Fanny Gonzalez, and thank you, council members, for giving me a few minutes. You have in the packet our work, our annual report, our work year to date. Our mission is to market Montgomery County as a place for group tours, leisure travelers, sports events, and meetings and conventions. And so our mission is driven through two divisions, sales and marketing, and we are on the road and selling the county as a destination. It's not just about hotel taxes that we generate. It is also about monies that are spent in the local economy aside from just hotel taxes. And so the additional help has been helping us push through some really tough times. The federal challenges that came in early 2025 were unexpected for us. And we saw a decline in room nights, decline in federal government business, in transient and also group business. And so it's been a little bit of a struggle through that in trying to shift our marketing to make sure that we're going after something other than federal government to backfill where our losses are. You have a great team representing you. We all work very hard. We're a small team. We're a team of 7, representing the entire county and all the needs of Silver Spring, Bethesda, Rockville, Gaithersburg, and Germantown. So we're pulled in a lot of different directions and feel like we do our best with the funding we have to represent everybody well.
Thank you for that. I'm going to turn it to council staff if there's anything else that you would like to add. If not, I see Councilmember William.
Thought I had time for a tic tac, but I don't. So I'm gonna wait. Ms. Groff, good to see you. My former co-office mate when I was a contractor at WorkSource Montgomery, and I know firsthand. I've seen your team grow, and I've seen the work that you've done over the years, and you are a revenue generator. I just want to understand there's obviously a legislative requirement that we fund you at least 7%. The gap that was described by the council president would be the money to bring you down to the 7%. Could you just that's a big number as we sit up here, right? You know, so it's tempting to ask, and I wasn't at the econ committee. What would the impact be if some portion or all would how would that operationally impact you if that number was reduced to some extent? And I realize some of this is up in the air because we don't know what the inflationary adjustment is going to be yet.
So I first wanted to note that some of the funding that you're seeing as the gap are inflationary increases we've received. So we've been receiving inflationary increases over the last couple years. So that, if you include FY27, that comes out to be a little over $250,000 within there. The impact is we're a marketing agency. So it's a small budget. The budget is 2.3 that's being proposed. We raise another probably 300,000 through trying to bring in private sector cooperatives and also a grant through the state. So it's a big impact. It would cut marketing in half. It would cut sales in half. It would cut our mission in half, but it would also cut staffing. There's no way to avoid that because we still have to be a marketing entity. So that would be the impact.
And you bring up the point, you're only 2.3 million already, and so taking 900,000 of that would be devastating. Okay. Thank you for the context. Thank you for the work you're doing, and appreciate you. Thank you.
I don't see anybody else wanting to speak. With that, we have a recommendation from the Economic Development Committee. All those in favor, please raise your hand. This item is approved. Thank you so much for coming and all the work that you do. We're going to move on to the Department of Recreation. I'm going to ask the Director Albornoz to come forward, as well as staff, and I'm going to turn it to Chair Fritzen.
Thank you to my committee member and council president. The PHP committee reviewed the county executive's FY27 recommended budget for the Department of Recreation. The county executive recommended an increase of $2.9 million or 4.27 from the FY26 approved operating budget. The budget funds administration, aquatics, countywide programs, recreation, community and neighborhood centers, senior adult programs, and youth development. The executive recommendation includes $127,403 in programmatic and staffing additions, enhancements, or other increases that need to be placed on the reconciliation list per the council president's approach. That included $104,098 for a program manager for administration of recreation contracts. More details on that is listed in the packet. Additionally, a $23,305 wrap-back systems background and fingerprinting verification. The council has talked extensively about the issues between MCPS and the Department of Recreation and some of the challenges with background checks, and this would help to address that backlog. In addition, the budget includes a $2.78498 million increase for compensation adjustments and other cost increases that are not required to be on the rec list. The committee also received a request for the funding of an additional Excel Beyond the Bell program from Councilmembers Lukey and Evans for $429,253, expanding the EBB program to Stedwick Elementary School. The committee put this funding on the rec list for consideration. The committee also requested that the department provide other EBB expansion scenarios, including potentially fewer days a week or some other programmatic suggestions for our consideration. And so we can turn to them to share that information if there's a way to tranche this. If you can't do the full, that was the request of the committee. And then I'll just note that the OBET score was excellent with a score of 11, noting proactive and strategic commitment to advancing racial equity and social justice, which we very much appreciate. With that, I'm happy to turn it over to Ms. Cummings to share programmatic changes in greater detail, the department's plans for the use of PLAR funds and Rec Assist, which are in the packet as well, but that is an overview of the committee's work, and do think turning it over to the department to share any views on that EBB expansion, which they were supportive of and understood the fiscal constraints, and we're looking at different scenarios. I think that would be appropriate as well.
Thank you. Just to note a couple of additional things that have come up through conversations since the committee meeting that we outlined in the cover page. We did put some additional information, as Chair Friedson mentioned, on Excel Beyond the Bell expansion. You can see on table 1 of the cover page, we have the FY27 Excel Beyond the Bell expansion to Stedwick Elementary for a full year. As annualized with a 9-month lapse, that would be a $441,202 increase to the budget for FY27. That would be $471,242 annualized. My apologies, for FY28. And as mentioned, there are some other EBB expansion options that the department highlighted. That's on table 2 of the cover page of the staff report. And I would just note that, and the department will certainly elaborate, but in their review, looking at options that were less days wasn't as much of a viable option, just due to the nature of it being an after-school program. That can be hard for families to attend if it's less than 5 days a week. So some of the options you see outlined, you can see there's a limited program where there would be 1 academic teacher and recreation enrichment. That would be 30 weeks. There's a model that's modeled after the Rec Extra middle school program, 1 modeled after the Fun Food and Fitness program, and another option that was highlighted as well is to expand EBBE seats to an existing program. So that would expand the seats to 144, which is 6 groups of 2 through 5th through 5th graders at an existing elementary location to accommodate youth from a neighboring school. Would the council wish to pause here for a discussion, or just keep going through?
I would say keep going until we...
That sounds good. Another thing we just wanted to note, there is a little bit of an inflationary adjustment. So upon further review of the operating budget, it was realized that 2 contracts in the total amount of $11,548 with Kid Museum were accidentally included in the list of non-competitive contract award entities that were used when calculating the county executive's recommended inflationary adjustment for the Department of Recreation. So I apologize. So just due to this realization, council staff recommends reducing the inflationary adjustment accordingly in the department's budget, which would bring the 2.5 inflationary adjustment to nonprofit service provider contracts down to $73,240. This would just be reflected in the overall budget. There's a little bit of information following up as well on some of the travel expenses that were discussed in committee during the base budget overview. And I will pause there for operating budget. Thank you.
You really can go through the whole thing right now, unless I don't see anybody with questions. So,
okay,
if you can continue as we had done with the other items.
Sure, sounds good. Moving on, there were two CIP budget amendments in the CE's April FY 27 through 32 memo. These changes include an adjustment to the Recreation Facilities Assessment Replacement Project. And there was some state funding that came in, and this will replace program GO bonds in the amount of $764,000. And this will support kitchen replacement, bleacher replacement, and some asset replacement at Long Branch. And this in total would amount to $914,000. And the second CIP item mentioned is the Kennedy Shriver Silver Spring Recreation and Aquatic Center. The executives recommends reallocating the $764,000 in GO bonds, that additional capacity that's opened up by the state grants, that would be used to address some unexpected conditions to the pool floor in the Kennedy Shriver Aquatic Center building envelope improvement project. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have a committee recommendation. I went through this item line by line in committee, so I don't have any questions, but I see Councilmember Wojo-Wando. There you go.
Thank you. Just a comment and one question. Obviously, we've been scrutinizing, and good to see you, Director Albanaz and team. We've been scrutinizing the new items, and I just want to lift up the one that we did agree to add to the reconciliation list, realizing, again, it might not make it, but I just wanted to allow you the opportunity to comment on it. It's the Program Manager for Administration of Contracts, and just how that current review of contracts is working and what it would mean if you got it, but if you didn't get it as well, how you would manage, because both scenarios are possible here. So I just wanted to allow you to do that, Director Albanaz.
Thank you, Councilmember Joando. Thank you, Council President, all the members of the committee, and all of my esteemed former colleagues. I know you all are going through a lot these days, but I certainly appreciate your work and your efforts. And the one addition is the FTE, which is for the program manager position, which would be a contract monitor. We were recently audited last year. The department is responsible for the oversight of more than 600 contracts, and we have one full-time manager and an aide that are responsible for overseeing those 600 contracts. Those contracts range in scope from everything from our yoga instructors to the largest contracts, which are the NDAs that we have to monitor, such as the Arts and Humanities Council. And there was an issue that we are working to reconcile right now with our colleagues in the Arts and Humanities Council, but that is what triggered the audit. And there was a very stern recommendation that we add more personnel and staff capacity to help make sure we capture more things moving forward. We are struggling to keep pace and to be able to review all of the contracts with fidelity, and that doesn't even include our ability to track some of the out-of-school time outcomes, for example, of some of our contractors. So we feel that this is actually a modest, because there was a recommendation for multiple positions, not just one. And if we don't secure this position, we continue to run the risk of having things fall through the cracks. And as we learned last year, significant things fall through the cracks. So we have an amazing team that's trying to hold things together, but that's why we're requesting this position now.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarity. And I also just want to lift up, I had asked during committee about the travel budget, and I got your response that the reason it was a little higher was because that was used to transport kids to after school and out of time programming. Is that, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yes, so that covers our fleet. We received a credit in FY26 from Fleet Management Services that we no longer have moving forward. These are funds that we need in order to be able to maintain our fleet of vehicles that do transport kids to and from after school programs. It also includes our box trucks. It also includes our stages that we use for special events. And so that funding is critical for us to be able to maintain our operation.
So not for staff travel, which you said, I think.
That's
was less
correct.
than
I wish
$10,000.
it was for staff travel, but it is not for staff travel.
Just wanted to lift that up. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you for those questions and the follow-up from the committee conversation. Next is Council Vice President Balcom.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do. It's nice to see you. Just wanted to touch base on the travel. We had the same issue that came up in T&E in the Department of Transportation. And in the Department of Transportation's travel budget was significant because it's the motor pool, right? And so we did ask if it's a finance issue. It's the code that they used, and we've asked if that can be changed. And certainly, we have access of whether we can change it in our budgets. But the finance department has to come up with a different term for it because it's all coded as travel. I just wanted to bring that up. Yeah.
That's a great point. Councilmember Evans.
Sure, great to see you, Director Avanos. So on the committee was gracious enough to add the Excel Beyond the Bell to the rec list. Councilmember Lukey and I had a listening session in Montgomery Village, Gaithersburg area, and Councilmember Lukey was not able to attend, but she had staff there, and that was her district. She's very much aware of what's happening in the district. And, you know, what we've been hearing and seeing is that our students need somewhere to go. And we had our councilmember for a day that was here, the student councilmember for a day who was here talking about the need for additional space. And so what we heard from some of the students at the listening session is that the middle schoolers and high schoolers are not able to participate in after school activities because they have to help out with their siblings at the elementary school level. So at the time, being a little bit more seasoned on the council, I am seeing the tight budget constraints that we're under. I saw where on the schedule, the table, that the costs would be reoccurring, right? And so thank you for sending over a variety of options for my colleagues to look at. I wanted to just talk a little bit about, so I'm looking at the Rec Extra Elementary and then the expansion of existing programs, but also in my reading, I'm not trying to put an additional load on the school system because that's a separate budget that we will be getting to in just a moment. But I also didn't want to catch the administrators flat-footed because I just explained the existing program in the Rec Extra Elementary so I can understand it a little bit better and just to kind of see what our options are.
Absolutely. So, and thank you again, Councilmember Evans and Councilmember Lukey, for that request. Thank you for the committee for considering it. So, Excel Beyond the Bell is without a doubt our most robust full-service out-of-school time program that we offer because it meets 4 or 5 days per week. It has multiple contractors that come in. We offer academic support. It's your full array and menu of out-of-school time programs. Acknowledging the difficult fiscal situation that we are in, we were asked to come up with different options, and so you'll see those before you. But our staff is constantly innovating, and so we came up with the concept of something called Rec Extra Elementary. Rec Extra is currently, as you stated, in all of our middle schools. The difference between Rec Extra and Excel Beyond the Bell is Rec Extra meets 1 or 2 days per week typically, and they are basically a club format. So it's a program, it's still a free program, but kids sign up for a program that has a beginning and an end, typically 6 to 8 weeks. And so while there are services being provided, they don't go as deep or as far as Excel Beyond the Bell, but I would say that they are a good way of providing some additional out-of-school time programming that can serve as a bridge until things improve and we can bring in the full array of services. And that's what we would envision here. We would begin the relationship building with Sedgwick and the principal and the administrators, because it does take time to build trust, to have the families become familiar with our programs, trust our staff. So it's a significantly lower cost way of establishing a program that may not go as far, but still certainly has value.
And then one other question, if you could answer this question. So then the school would be tasked with finding an adult to support the club?
Adrian Clutter, Division Chief. So we work with the schools and we identify, it actually creates an opportunity for teachers to have additional employment. So we work with the school, we identify key staff, and we bring them on as recreation staff. And so they would get paid to be an after-school liaison, club sponsors. So it's great in the sense that it gives teachers the chance to do things that they have interest in. It might be a golf club or a knitting club or some other type of specialty. So it allows that flexibility, and that's where Rec Extra is slightly different from Excel Beyond the Bell as well.
And then the other question, so the expansion of existing programs, that, from what I read, so that would mean Steadwick students would go to a elementary school where there's an existing EBBE, but then they would be required to, they would need transportation to get there, to get back. Would that also require some staff to go with them? It seemed like it's a lot. Yeah.
Correct. So one option that we decided to explore was looking at nearby Whetstone Elementary School, which is about 1 mile from Steadwick, and adding additional capacity to that school. It would require staff. We'd need staff to gather the students at Steadwick, and we would hire additional support staff, most likely TeamWorks, that could even potentially ride the bus over. And we would work with MCPS. It would require us to add transportation to make sure that we have that capacity to get them to Whetstone. But we would want to reach out and collaborate with both principals to make sure that school administration is okay with this model. But it is a strong model to consider given the circumstances.
Sure. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, the transportation cost and the stipend for the staffing would come out of the MCPS budget?
No.
No, it would come out of ours.
It would come out
Yeah.
of, okay.
Yeah, it's the, of the options that we listed, it's the least expensive. So that would be for, we believe we'd be able to serve an additional 24 students. The total cost year-round would be approximately $86,000.
However, we did not include additional transportation costs in this model. Now, it is something to consider with MCPS. They have at times been able to absorb the cost, but we're not certain that they would do that. Some years we've added where we get transportation money in our budget, we contract with MCPS Transportation and we pay the additional transportation cost. We did not include that here in this model, but we can estimate that it would probably be around $10,000 if a individual bus was added. If a stop was added, it would be much less.
Okay. All right. The costs are adding on. So those were my questions. I didn't know yeah.
You're going to yield to, yeah, go ahead. You're going to yield to
Thank you.
Councilmember Dawn Lukey.
Thank you. And again, thank you to Councilmember Evans for partnering with me on this. And so just to explain, Steadwick Elementary is the only school in that cluster that doesn't have an Excel Beyond the Bell program. And I certainly appreciate the chart in the packet and the different options that are there. And of course, my heart, my preference, and what the community is advocating for is the full program. I also understand the budget constraints we're in, but when I'm looking at costs or value, because those are two different things, the total cost, but also the value of what you are going to get. If you do some number crunching, it comes out a little differently, right? Because the expansion of existing program, and to Councilmember Evans' point, the transportation logistics there, and then still there's nothing at their home school, which to me is significant, which is a huge part of what the families were asking for. The actual cost per person of the expansion program, because you only are getting 24 extra kids served, is $3,608 per child served. Which is not much less than the full EBB $3,676 or the EBBE limited $3,319.59. So when you look at the other option that stands out, where you're maximizing it, is actually the largest number of kids that we could serve at Steadwick Elementary is the Rec Extra program. And I appreciate your comments related to how that can work with MCPS existing teachers. These are folks who already have relationships with the children they would be serving. And you could serve a maximum of 150 kids through that ends up being a cost of $1,070.75 per person, which is a lot less than the other option. So depends on which way you want to look at it. I know we all have lots to consider, but I wanted to highlight that because I think it in the decision-making process, people have to look at the value of what you are getting for what you are paying for and which things will maximize impact. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you for that explanation. I just want to be clear with the two council members who just spoke. You're not making a motion, you're agreeing with the committee recommendation, or are you making a motion to change anything? Just want to make clear. You're going to keep it as the committee has recommended. Okay, just want to make sure. I don't see anybody else wanting to speak. With that, we have a committee recommendation on the Department of Recreation. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And it is approved unanimously. Thank you very much to the department and for everything that you do. And it's a nice transition to the Montgomery County Public Schools, showing the partnership that we have among different county agencies. This one was REG, but it's also a lot of work with the HHS department and the Public Safety Department, as we witnessed 2 weeks ago when we had our session on public safety and how the county efforts from different departments work in conjunction. And that's something that we continuously need to remember. With that, I'm going to turn it to the chair of the Education and Culture Committee, Chair Jawando.
Thank you, Madam President, and appreciate our colleagues from MCPS and the board who are here, who we'll turn to momentarily. And I think this is the last item, so we've got a good bit of time for discussion. The Education and Culture Committee voted unanimously to place the county executive's full $179 million local funding increase on the reconciliation list, and per the council president's guidance, in 10 buckets that are equally divided. There was a 2-to-1 vote with Councilmember Evans dissenting to set a floor recommendation of $149 million, and which would cap the potential reductions at $30 million in tranches of $10 million each. That the goal there was to, and as you'll hear today in questions with the school system and the board, that going deeper than that would be, in the majority of the committee's view, catastrophic. And just for some context, and this is from the superintendent's budget slide earlier in the process, in FY 2010, the county's per pupil contribution MCPS adjusted for inflation was $16,806. Today it's $14,874. And since that time, since 2021 actually, more recently, MCPS has added nearly 6,000 students eligible for free and reduced price meals, over 5,000 multilingual learners, nearly 4,000 students with disabilities with an individualized education plan. We're being asked to do more and to help our students meet the needs. I see it every day in the lives of my kids and their teachers and their staff. And that's how part of what informed the committee's recommendation around a $30 million figure. They have to contribute to our budget challenges for sure. But I think what I'm hoping can happen today in conversation and colleagues is to understand what these different levels could potentially mean. That was the other committee request, that the board and the school system come to the council, to the full council, to provide further context about their budget and what certain levels of funding could mean. And with that, I'll hold any other further comments to the discussion, and just if there's any opening statement from I figured there might be, from the board president, with your permission. I'll turn it back to you for that part.
Thank you so much for the committee report. And before we turn it to council staff, we're going to ask, first of all, the president of the school board, Grace Rivera Oven, and then Dr. Taylor, if you want to share some remarks.
Good afternoon, Council President Fanny Gonzalez, Council Vice President Balcom, and members of the County Council. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today as you deliberate the critically important decision of funding Montgomery County Public Schools for our FY 2027 operating budget. The Board of Education's visions outlined in our strategic plan is for all MCPS students to be future ready. And we mean all. This is grounded in our commitment to academic excellence, preparing future-ready graduates, fostering positive, safe, and effective learning environments, and recruiting and retaining a high-quality, diverse workforce. However, achieving that vision depends on real, sustained investment in our classrooms, our staff, and our students. Our proposed fiscal year 2027 operating budget reflects this vision, and on behalf of my Board of Education colleagues, I assure you, this budget request is not filled with a wish list of items that are nice to have. It represents the minimum level of investment that it is needed to restore MCPS legacy of excellence, improve student achievement, and maintain fiscal responsibility. By far, the largest single investment request in our budget is to honor our negotiated agreements with our employees. It is imperative that the Council provide sufficient funding to both allow MCPS to honor its negotiated agreements and to fulfill other fiscal commitments such as employee benefits. MCPS remains central to the economic strength and social vibrancy of our county. We will fulfill our mission to academic excellence and to ensuring equitable opportunities for every family and student in Montgomery County. Families choose to live here, and we heard that earlier today from one of our former colleagues on the board, Councilwoman Evans. They choose to live here because of our schools, and employers invest here in Montgomery County because of the strength of our workforce. And at the same time, the board relies on you, the County Council, to provide the resources necessary to make these opportunities a reality in our school system. We do understand the fiscal constraints facing the Council in your budget deliberations. However, underfunding our school carries real and immediate costs for students, families, and the broader community. We are here as partners with you in our shared priorities of providing excellent educational opportunities to all families in Montgomery County. MCPS is integral to the future of our county, and we will continue to work together to fund an operating budget that meets the needs of our more than 155,000 students and almost 30,000 dedicated employees. We ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and thank you for being here. Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Vice President, members of the Council. We are thrilled to be here with you today, and thank you for this opportunity to illuminate some issues in our budget. And we want to thank you for your investments that you've made in the past for the children and for the future of Montgomery County. I also want to take a moment to thank the Education and Culture Committee for your deep dive into our budget and your thorough analysis of our operating budget and acknowledging some of the challenges that we're struggling with. It is indeed a much different landscape today than it was even just a few years ago to be a teacher and an educator and a staff member in MCPS. Our fiscal 2027 operating budget continues the work that we began last year. It has no surprises. It remains focused on our fundamentals of teaching and learning and sends a clear message of our strong commitment to students and staff, significantly tempered by reductions to the base budget for the second year in a row. A true first for MCPS, now 2 years in a row. Our total request is an increase of $179 million, which sounds like a lot of money because it is, in local funding. This amount is less than the full amount of the $189 million needed to fund our negotiated employee agreements and keep improving our employee benefit fund. It is also $100 million less than the requested increase amount from the previous year. It reflects an iterative approach to solving our instructional and financial long-standing issues. Many long-standing issues that have gone unaddressed. We are excited to see that the council supported the county government employee contracts yesterday, and we hope that this is an indication of an approach that you will take when evaluating MCPS. And we're thrilled to hear a council member talk about return on investment and value, because we are the best game in town for your value in terms of dollars. It is imperative that you provide sufficient funds to allow us to both honor our commitments to our employees and to also maintain operational continuity. Knowing the economic landscape, we have already taken reductions to our budget and constrained our requests significantly beyond what we should be asking for. For example, the budget that the Board of Education adopted includes significant changes to our central services and a $70 million lapse assumption, which, to be completely candid with you, is dangerously too high given the position reductions and low vacancy rate that we're experiencing. Further reductions beyond this sizable lapse could create the conditions for deficit. It is critically important that you know this up front before making budget decisions about the school system's funding level, that this is a distinct possibility. In addition, we are using the decreased enrollment to allow us to appropriately and proportionately and equitably staff our schools without adding to the budget. Please recognize the minor miracle for what this really is: fiscal prudence in light of challenging circumstances. The approach we put forward will not only reduce fewer positions, but not add positions to the budget either. School staffing is still a net negative in this budget, making the probability of our staff reassignments and placements due to collapsed positions near impossible if done en masse. We acknowledge the fiscal challenges that we are all facing and that you have to weigh in this very difficult budget season. And we also acknowledge that MCPS is the largest single agency with the largest single budget, making us an easy target for the uninformed. But please also remember that when adjusting for inflation, as noted by the committee chair for Education and Culture, that we used to spend more per student 15 years ago than we do today. And things have changed, and not for the better. And MCPS, as a percent of the county's operating budget, was greater than half of the county's operating budget 15 years ago, which is the national norm in just about every community in the country, and now is less than half and shrinking as a proportion of the county's operating budget, which is far from the norm in the rest of the country. Please remember, as you make your decisions, we implore you that we are directly responsible for over 150,000 children and nearly 30,000 employees, 70% of whom work, live, and also pay taxes in Montgomery County. While our ask is much lower than it was last year, it's still big, because what we need to address in the school system is also big, and the needs of our community are big. Your school system is often the front line in addressing many issues that council talks about on this dais. Without presumptively speaking for the Board of Education, because I don't want to do that, we have a process here. Changes to our budget will impact services. This is very important and should be an eyes wide open moment for the council. I want to be very clear that reductions to the school system's budget will translate into lost people and services based on some of the scenarios that you are considering. It will be difficult for us to continue to provide the things that we have provided in the past. Depending on the size of the reduction, everything from social support, mental health services, athletics, instructional support, as well as many other aspects of the school system will be impacted. There's certainly no shortage of challenges that you're facing. We are all up for that challenge, and we ask the council to meet us with the resources that we need to prevail. I always learn so much when I come to council, and I got to tell you, I'm really looking forward to seeing what else ends up on the reconciliation list, because our entire budget request is on the reconciliation list. And so I think we're all eager to see how council is going to prioritize the changes to the budget this year.
Thank you for that, and the list is very long, so you know, for that rec list. And let me remind you, we just had the rec department here, and they do work with children. And we also have the public safety agencies here, and they also work with children. And it's a tough budget, and especially because we don't have a property tax increase, okay? So give us some room here. With that, I'm gonna start asking colleagues who has questions. But before that, council staff, we gotta go through the report first. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just quickly, on pages 3 and 4 of your report are other decision points for the council today. At the top of page 3, the committee recommends accepting the county executive's reductions to the Tech Mod project. There's a table there for you to consider. Below that, also recommending to accept the county executive's reductions for the facility planning project related to a potential public-private partnership for the redevelopment of the Carver Educational Services Center. And below that, also recommending accepting the county executive reduction for new expenditures from the materials management building relocation. This is the warehouse project that NCPS is considering. And then the final one on the top of page 4 is the committee recommends accepting the Board of Education proposal for the relocatable projects classrooms project, which concurs the county executive. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We're going to start with Councilmember Mink.
Thank you. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to speak at whatever level of detail you are able, recognizing that obviously budget decisions at any kind of line item detail are something that are hashed out over a great deal of time and effort with the board. But to the best of your ability, that you can help to inform the decision making that we have in front of us, what funding scenarios, cuts to the request in the amounts of like 30, 90, maybe like a 30, 60, 90, if you can just help us to understand the differences at those different levels.
Sure, I'll create some context and share with you how we've organized our budget. First off, we're delighted to report that folks can drill down to the penny how we spend our money on our budget documents. Folks can go to our website, type in the word budget, and get to a whole budget website where they can evaluate our expenditures for return on investment, because that's important to us too. We organize our budget into just a handful of buckets. The first one being revenue, the second one being changes to the base budget, the third one being non-discretionary changes that are either legal changes by law, policy, or regulation that we have to fulfill. A good example of this is that, like most of the citizens in our community, their electric bill went up. So did ours, except our electric bill is tens of millions of dollars, and our electric bill went up by $4 million this past year. So that's a good example of what a non-discretionary expenditure looks like. We also categorize the blueprint for Maryland's future, and then we have discretionary expenses. So a natural place for us to look, and again, I don't want to be presumptive, because ultimately whatever county council decides to fund the school system at, it will eventually go back to the Board of Education for reconciliation, and certainly I'll make some recommendations along those lines, but it will be their decision. A natural place for us to start is with changes to the budget that are discretionary, because they are a choice and we're not compelled by law, policy, or regulation to do them. And so that would be the first place to start. And this year we have about $20 million worth of discretionary expenses. You take a look at some of those items, though, they look pretty non-discretionary, but the reality is how we've defined them is by their legal definition and by the accounting definition associated with them. But you asked about $30 million, and that's only $20 million. So beyond that, we then have to assess and start to prioritize positions that are as far away from critical functions to the school system's core business model, which is teaching and learning. So effectively, as far away from the classroom as possible, we need to look at positions that we could reduce. And since the gap there is about $10 million, you may be asking, well, how many people is that? And a weighted average for the salary and benefits of our employees, a good round number for council to think about, is about $100,000, because 35% of our employees is made up of benefits. So the teacher cost of an inexperienced teacher or an experienced SEIU staff member, the weighted average of a staff member might balance out to be about $100,000. So $10 million of $100,000 expenditures is about 100 people that we would have to reduce the school system of active employees. So that's a pretty sizable hit right there. So just right out off of the top, you're looking at all of the discretionary changes plus an additional 100 people who are active employees that would have to be reduced as far away from the classroom as possible. That's the starting place. You also asked about the higher end of that, which was $90 million. Given that metric of just kind of thinking through how many people that is, it's a choice. Can the school system live without 900 or 1,000 employees and still provide the services that it provides today? Most certainly not. So that would be forcing the hand of the Board of Education to examine reopening employee agreements with our labor associations. So you really have both ends of the spectrum there, where you are still making really significant reductions at a $30 million change versus a forced change to employee agreements to address wages. A good way of thinking about the MCPS budget, because we are a system of people and not of things, we would probably be better positioned with a little bit higher mix of things. The things in our thing budget are instructional materials and fuel for school buses, which, by the way, we will have to come back and revisit, which is problematic given the landscape of fuel prices today. But 90% of our budget is really made up of just two things: how many employees we have in the school system and how much we pay them. And so when you're looking at reductions, they're going to come from one of those two buckets inherently. And when you're looking at a $90 million reduction, there's no way to avoid looking at both of those things, because it is so significant in the grand scheme of the budget. In terms of the midpoint and the middle point, you are still looking at some combination of the two, of some kind of adjustment to the wage agreements and the economics package of our labor association agreements, and also significant reductions to staff. I think, without really discussing this with the Board of Education in great detail, we do a lot of that in the public space so that there's an opportunity for our community to opine on it. We would want to come up with some kind of prioritization metric to communicate how we would make some of those decisions. And preliminarily, I can tell you that my recommendation would try to keep as much away from the classroom as possible in the things that touch the classroom. So classroom adjacent services like paraprofessionals, special education, additional services, those would be the things that we would really try to protect with our general ed classroom experience, and then kind of emanate out from there and look at some of those other areas that we could reduce without really severely interrupting service.
Thank you. And to that point, as we've had this conversation over the last few difficult budgets. We have asked you to go back and look at the base and to find as many reductions as you possibly can. And I know that you have been making similar calculations as you have gone through that process, including a major reorganization to try to find savings and efficiencies and all of the without reducing services for our students ultimately. But the result of that, of course, has been that there is not a lot, that there is a lot less left to find those types of cuts that have some distance from the classroom. So if you could speak to that briefly, what options you do or don't have there, and then also, you know, to your point about how many of our staff who could potentially be endangered by having their positions be endangered are residents of the county and could be looking at a potential job loss. Of course, the first option that you tried to do is to offer them to move to fill a vacancy. So some number of those positions, if eliminated, those folks could be offered the chance to shift to a different position, which could be at it could be at a reduced pay scale, could be very different type of work than they have been doing in recent years, et cetera, but they would ideally be offered at least another position. And so if you can give us a sense of how much wiggle room you have there in terms of the ability to offer that to folks as well.
All right, there was a lot to unpack there, so I might come back and revisit a couple of those. I'll start with your vacancy question. Since we are declining in population, we've actually proportionally already done some reductions. And so we are net negative in terms of school positions already in this budget because we are contracting. We're actually making up for 3 budget years worth of change to the student population. So the amount of vacancies that we have are really hyper-specific and only in a few places and create very minimal domino effects. One that might create domino effects might be a principal vacancy due to a retirement or a move. And that might create a domino effect, which might create other jobs. But the lion's share of our positions are things like electrician, plumber. We're not transitioning somebody from a classroom teaching position to one of those positions or from another SEIU position to that position easily. So the whole notion of being able to fill with attrition or with vacancies like MCPS has done in the past when you're growing, that's not really possible this year. And it's a very different dynamic than I think the one that we've been used to. In terms of central office changes, we are 2 for 2, 2 consecutive years in making adjustments to central services and trying to find efficiencies to bring you a budget of needs, not a budget of wants. The Board of Education has evaluated that, and I will say that any time that we do make adjustments organizationally, it does come at a cost. It does tend to force a workload rebalancing or reconsideration and you have to make some tough choices as to, are we going to continue to provide this service, or are we going to continue to complete this report? Are we going to continue to provide that evaluation, or are we abandoning that because we don't have the capacity to do that? And so those, I think, are some of the questions that we've struggled with and have tried to land on to bring you an efficient budget each year.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I assume that other colleagues have questions, so I will get back in the queue. Thank you.
Councilmember Wills Jowando.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate Councilmember Menk's questions and the answers about the lapse and just how there's not. I think we have to underline 3 times the fact that there is not ability to absorb positions through the RIF process. Traditionally, there is. Every year I've been on the council, pretty much, we've been growing, so you can do that. It's not. These are going to be potentially real losses of jobs for hundreds of people, depending on what we do. I want to just focus in on the contracts a little bit. It's Education Appreciation Week. We preliminarily approved the contracts yesterday, as you mentioned, for our other government employees, which I support. And I think is the right thing to do. Obviously, MCPS is in the second year of a contract that you were asked to do, and those increases. I think we have to remember what the folks that are working with our kids are actually making. You know, a paraeducator who, you know, you could make an argument on the top of the list of most important people in the school system. Everyone's important. I'll tell you my personal experience, they're super important. In most cases is making less than a Catholic priest in this area who took a vow of poverty. The average salary for a Catholic priest is $40,000 to $60,000 in this area.
And Catholic priests also have housing.
Yes, you made the point. And they have free housing. A first-year teacher who makes $60,000 here, which we thank the Blueprint, and that's great. After they spend their rent, utilities, taxes, health insurance, car payment, they're a negative $270 a month. Paraeducators are negative $1,600 a month. The security guard, who at Blake High School just disarmed an armed person a couple weeks ago.
Third week on the job.
$38,000 a year that gentleman's paid.
Heroes.
He deserves a raise. That guy deserves a 3% raise or 3.5% raise. So I just want people to understand that it's not this largesse that's happening with our employees. They need this to be in our community. 70% of them live here. The teachers in Baltimore City are paid more than our teachers. It's important for competitiveness. It's important for attracting and retaining the best and brightest. We need to make sure we keep up with that. It's a core commitment. Could you talk about the discretionary items a little bit? In that discretionary item, we have security guards for elementary schools, which currently aren't there. I think if you ask most parents, myself included, I have an elementary student, I'd like a security guard at that school. We also have the special education resource teachers at the school. Could you explain just even those two, which I think are the largest two in that bucket?
Yes, of course. I'll start with our security assistants. One of the conversations that we had in the budget discussion last year, and I'm pleased to remind council that we had promised to come back to you with iterative solutions and not to eat the entire apple all in one bite. There's a lot of structural issues that we need to address. One of them is to make sure that we have adequate security presence in all of our schools. I think we see that underscored regularly in things that happen in the school system and in the community, and the necessity for us to make sure that we have that coverage. So we committed to a multi-year plan to add security assistance, to expand our footprint, and for the next couple years to make sure that our elementary schools were covered. This is the second phase of a 6-phase process to do that. The other one is the special education resource teachers. This is commonplace in every school district that touches Montgomery County, Virginia or Maryland, where there is a special education coordinator position that assumes the LEA responsibilities in supervising special education at the elementary and secondary levels. We have them at the secondary level for good reason, because there's a significant volume of special education needs that require support. But at the elementary level, it's very labor intensive in terms of the amount of meetings, the amount of paperwork that's required to establish eligibility for special education services or to not establish special education services. And so as a consequence of that, one of the things that I've heard frequently from council members and community members is, gosh, we wish MCPS would be a lot less engaged in litigation with special education. We do too. We would love to make sure that we are a lot less engaged in that space. We see this as a potential long-term cost-saving measure in addition to providing the level of continuity of services that our parents and our students need, and adding stability to a system that desperately requires it.
I appreciate that. Those things in my mind are not discretionary, but they're in your budget as non-discretionary because they're not required by law, but they are, seriously needed. The last thing I'll say is, we recommended the full amount go on, and that there be a floor, and I just want to recognize that even at the floor, that's going to be difficult. That would be difficult. That would require a lot. It would encapsulate some really difficult decisions that's going to affect people. But I think we need to support this budget, and I appreciate my colleagues' consideration. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Before I turn it to the next council member, I will say that, especially with the new superintendent and the new leadership on the Board of Education, and I say this as a parent, which complains a lot, and I just have certain schools that I still need more of your help, and I'm not gonna get into details because you know what I'm talking about. I have seen the huge evolution of MCPS in terms of transparency. I mean, you already mentioned the budget and how really practical it is for people to go on the website and look for things. Yeah, you can say there is always room for improvement, but I can also say the same thing about county government and and particular agencies. The same thing. And I just want you to make sure that you understand, and I think you do. Nobody here, it's saying we don't want to fund the schools. No one here is saying we don't appreciate our teachers at all. We're just confronted with a situation that we have a budget that is not balanced, and the money has to come from somewhere. My job as council president has been, since we're not doing a property tax increase, let's put everything on the table. Everything on the table, whether people like it or not. Even things that I deeply care about, we're on the table, because if I'm gonna be council president, I need to be objective and I cannot take favors on anything. But I just wanted to say that in public, yes, there's a lot of room for improvement, but I can say the same thing for every single agency, not just within Montgomery County, but across the state. Okay, let's just put, and I don't even want to address state agencies. So that's something that I don't want this conversation to lose that. And also a reminder of what I said a few minutes ago, how your work is connected with so many other agencies and things that we're doing to uplift our communities in terms of, health and human services, with a crisis center, with the police department, with the rec department, with parking planning. People have no idea. And everybody needs support. And so I felt like I had to say that. And with that, I'm going to turn it to Councilmember Shara Evans.
Good to see everyone, and I appreciate Chair Jawando's passion. You have a good heart, so I just wanted to kind of explain my vote in committee. I thought it was, in my opinion, I've been here a little bit of time. I'm not gonna say I'm new anymore. I didn't want to be premature in cutting the school system. And however we want to word that, I wanted to allow my colleagues an opportunity to not only look at the packet, but most importantly, to hear from the school system, so that everyone could hear firsthand what it would mean for any reduction to happen. And as I stated yesterday, what I didn't want to do is catch anybody flat-footed. I'm not prepared today to even say what I want to reduce the school system at. I would like for us as a full council to take what we've heard the school system say, to look at the information and really make informed decision, because whatever we do is going to really impact the system in a way that I don't know that it will. From what you said, any amount won't be good, right? And having been a parent of 2 MCPS graduates, having been on the school board, I'm getting a little emotional. I don't want to do anything that's going to hurt our school system. I don't. So if you all are going to make a vote today, I'm not going to abstain. I've never done that in the 8 years I've been on the board. I try to make sure that whatever decision I make is informed, and I know this is a huge budget. This is, the school system's budget is big. If my husband sees this, he'll be like, why are you crying? Anyway, but I just don't take anything that I do lightly. This is a huge responsibility, whether I'm here for a year or for 4 years. This county, the school system means a lot. And as we sit down and we think about what we have to do, I just want us to really be clear and be sure what that will mean for our school system. And I've tried to tell people that whatever I'm going to do, whatever decision I'm going to do, I want to be upfront and I want to bring people along. I hope I've been able to bring you along with whatever I've said or whatever decision I've made on this council. Because what people are seeing, I hope what they're hearing and seeing, because the staff here at the council, they're so good. And sometimes they may speak to our understanding, and I don't know if it's easy for everybody else to be clear to understand what they're actually saying. They spend a lot of time, I don't know when they sleep, but they're really dissecting this budget and really going through it. My team, I appreciate them. We went through it line by line, the reconciliation list, to kind of go through to see what we would not be able to do. And they were getting on me because I was like, yeah, we got to keep that. So anyway, all I'm saying is that whatever decision that we are as a council as a whole we're going to make, it's not just for this moment in time. I'm thinking about years out and what that impact will look like for the county, right? And as much as I tout that our school system is the greatest, I want to continue to be able to say that because I do know that people are working really hard. And so I heard the comments that were made during the proclamation. I don't want anybody to think my words are hollow. I'm not going to say anything that I do not mean. Whatever I say, I'm very intentional about what I say. And when I was talking about educators, I was talking about the bus drivers, the cafeteria workers. I've been in schools, I've had children, I worked firsthand, and I know what people are doing. I know how hard they're working. So my colleagues, I keep saying I want to give anybody surprises, but I'm sitting here today and I'm just thinking that we're probably going to make a motion to support what the committee brought forward, but I'm not ready to do that because I heard your words and because I knew it before you said it. And so I'm one person. I try to, share with my colleagues when I can, when we have those moments, because they're good people. We do talk about the education system, but I just know it's tough. And so when I hear you talk about how much you need, I know they're thinking about all the other needs in the county, as I am too. And so this is really tough. So I talked long. I'll stop. I just wanted to say that.
I just want to clarify it here. Just want to clarify it. The vote today, so the recommendation in front of us, and you, as a member of the Education and Culture Committee, agreed with the county executive recommendation. What we're doing is just increase, but put aside the money that the MOE, put that aside. That's into the base. We're talking about the money, the funding increase of $179 million. That's all we're talking about. And we're not saying, at least I cannot make motions as council president. Personally, I will not because I can't either. What we're saying is that, and this is what the committee agreed on, is putting the $179 million increase that the county executive suggested into the reconciliation list, like any other items. And like I said a moment ago, that list is long. That vote happens next week, okay? It doesn't happen today. We're just saying we're going to put in the reconciliation list the $179 million that the county executive recommended as an increase. Just want to make sure you're clear.
Sure, so I am clear of that, but I do know there was a 2-to-1 vote to bring it down to 149, so I didn't know we were going to
No.
Okay, I'm just, so now I get to say,
we're moving.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm new, I
that's-
didn't know that, I'm just making sure, okay.
No, I think we're on the same page unless somebody has a motion that I'm not aware of. And then the money based on the funding increase based on what we had agreed on and we have done in every single committee recommendation is going to the rec list. And this one will be in tranches of 10%. And that will be a total of $179 million. So, cool. Okay. First, I'm going to move on then. Everybody's clear. And I am not saying that if somebody has a motion to make, please feel free. I just haven't heard that yet. Councilmember Mick, you're again back in the queue. I have 3 people after you.
Oh, I can circle back.
Thank you. Okay, you got the message. Councilmember Don Lukey.
Thank you. All right. As noted by the council president, we are just going to keep things alive and for discussion and as we work through all of this, but there's a few things, and look, it's been a rough week. I'm not talking about the budget. I'm talking about what Councilmember Jawando mentioned, because my 3 children were at that school for that shooting last week. And another thing that keeps happening is in the classroom during classes, during instructional time, staff are picking at the budget and highlighting what's for consideration before their mother in the classroom. That's not okay. It's not okay. I know these times are tough, and every single one of us up here values public education. We've received public education. Our children are receiving public education. And the fact of the matter is, we are dealing with incredibly difficult times that a lot of it is not stuff we created. And when I say we, I mean everybody in this room. And yet everybody in this room, everybody who was here this morning, have to work together to get through it and navigate through it. There is no other way around it but through. And it's going to require a lot of challenging things moving forward. So there's been talk and use of the words cuts and reductions as to what the decision making is. And I get that. That may be helpful rhetoric in advocacy. It's also inaccurate, because what we are mandated to do is MOE, and every year we fund above that. We do. And then the question is how much above that we can afford to do, knowing that there is no property tax increase happening, right? We took that off the table. So the question is, how much above MOE can we afford to fund? And one of the things that I'm looking at personally, and I just want to put this pin out there, and I know, and thank you, the council president in her memo to all of us, put a number out there, right? It's a conversation starter, all right? The 90 million. And the education and culture chair put a number out there, the 30 million, right? And I'm looking at, because the biggest part of the budget that you all have to deal with, and I know you have over the last almost 2 years now that you've been here, been working through the other aspects, the non-compensation aspects of the budget. But what I asked for was to look back at the last 10 fiscal years and the compensation cost increases for MCPS compensation versus our revenue increases as a county. And I'd ask that all of you take a look at those numbers too. Because it can explain how we are at the situation we are in many respects budgetarily, and why we feel such budgetary strains. But our projection for FY27 for revenue increase is 3%. It's an average, right? And so that number has some significance to me in what is affordable or not affordable in this. And I just wanted to flag that because I do think it's significant. We have a lot to balance
here along with everything else that has that push and pull. But I will note that over the past 10 fiscal years, from FY16 through FY26, the compensation increases have exceeded our revenue increases 7 out of 10 years, and sometimes by double or more. And because of the MOE law and because of the way that worked, that creates an increasing pressure over time. And unfortunately, we are left to deal with this in the here and now because of all of the budgetary problems that we are experiencing as a local government, the things we have to take on as a local government that the state has pushed to us, the money that we don't have from the feds that we used to have. And so we have to deal with that all collectively. And I know when I met with you all separately, I said my philosophy for dealing with this budget has been to mitigate and minimize harm so that we are not adversely impacting any one thing too much. That is still my goal, and we will have to work through that. But it means that, again, nobody's going to get everything they want. Nobody. It can't happen. The money isn't there. And so what we try to do is be as diplomatic as possible and as balanced as possible in that decision making, and that is my commitment to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Council Vice President Marilyn Malcolm.
Thank you. I've shared this with many of you in the room. My frustration just continues to be the conflict between the role of the council and the role of MCPS. From the MCPS perspective, your job is to educate our children, and you do that very well. Our job is to pay for that with taxpayer dollars. And we don't take that lightly, and we have the final responsibility to do that. We have the final responsibility to make sure the budget works. We don't have any say in the budget that comes from MCPS, and sadly, we don't have any say in the budget that comes from the county executive. We are forced to take that budget, whatever that budget is, and balance it to the best of our ability, and make sure that our residents are not overburdened. So yesterday, in a unanimous decision, we decided to not raise taxes. Many people up here, most people up here, commented that now is not the time to raise taxes. We all know that our residents are stretched, including the 30,000 employees from MCPS. Not all of them, I'm sure, but our residents are stretched right now. And now is not the time to raise taxes. So that puts an additional burden that we have to balance this budget when we are not the closest to the issues. We have to make decisions on transportation and public safety, on the state's attorney's office. We've been in session one after another, the budgets. And but we have to do that. That's our job. We have a structural deficit. I think everybody knows that. We have a structural deficit in Montgomery County. And if we don't make cuts, that deficit continues to grow and grow. And when MCPS or McGeo or the police or the departments talk about the possibility of reducing staff or laying off individuals, if we don't make cuts in this budget, we're going to have to do that. And so I just want to make sure that everybody, I'm sure that everybody here knows, but everybody who's watching at home, this is not an easy decision to make, because we have to take into consideration all of these things and everything on the reconciliation list, and everything to not only to protect our residents and educate our residents, but not overburden them. So we have to make cuts. We still have 3 days to go, and I'm certainly looking at options. I'm hoping everybody is working the numbers and trying to come up with the solutions and floating solutions, and everybody's doing that. And I appreciate that. But we have 3 days to go, and we have to find this money. And our staff does a brilliant job. Thank you, Mr. Howard and Jean, to help us with that decision. So I just want to put that out there. It's a very tough decision to make, and we have to make it.
Thank you. Next is Councilmember Evan Glass.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, everyone, for your thoughtful conversations, and to MCPS for your presentation and insight. There are 2 points I want to raise, and the first one I think has been alluded to, but I want to talk a little bit more about, and it's about maintenance of effort. And I'm going to lean on Mr. Prouty here, knowing the various roles he has played, currently, first and foremost, analyst to the council. But Mr. Prouty, can you just share for the public conversation what maintenance of effort is and why we have it?
So maintenance of effort is a state law which requires that the per pupil spending for any year from the county to the school system does not decrease.
Right. And that's been law about a decade or so?
More than that.
More than that.
Yep.
And for my time on the council, we have exceeded maintenance of effort every single year with record levels of funding, as has been noted. And it's important to restate that. And the reason why maintenance of effort was a state law was because when the Great Recession occurred, local jurisdictions were looking for funding. And local jurisdictions wanted to make sure, let me rephrase that, state lawmakers wanted to ensure that the integrity and capacity of our school systems remained intact, making sure that the funding they had per pupil continued even despite economic hardship. And that was very controversial at the time. None of us were at the council, but I remember following what was going on in Annapolis and in Rockville, and Rockville was not too happy about the change. They wanted greater leverage. They wanted greater ability to manage the county's finances. And since that law, we have done even better. I think when that law was originally passed, there was concern about what would happen, but this body particularly has exceeded maintenance of effort and has increased the per pupil spending year over year. And so it is absolutely correct that on a historical basis, we are not where we were 20 years ago. There are a number of metrics that differ from 20 or 30 years ago, and we're still trying to catch up. A number of labor contracts continue having that be a point of discussion, seeing if we can catch up to where we once were 20 years ago. And it seems like we're constantly on the treadmill. But here, we've done better. And I think that is important to note, because whatever decisions this body ends up making, we are maintaining per pupil spending. And as we have done every single year, we are seeing how much additional we can provide. The second point I want to raise is how different jurisdictions fund their school systems. Here in Maryland, as I note, we have maintenance of effort. We have 24 local school systems, the 23 counties and the city of Baltimore, which has been alluded to, and they are large. And the system for managing our school systems is not even bifurcated, it's trifurcated. It is beyond that because we have the superintendent and the school board and then the county executive. And then the last step in the process is an 11-member county council that has to manage all of it. The current budget is $7.6 billion, and it's left to this body to manage all of it. And that is even worse in this situation because the county executive introduced a budget that this body has unanimously rejected. So I'm originally from New York, and in New York, there are school districts with basically every zip code. And it is not the county government, it is not the townships, it is the school boards, locally elected by their own community, who make these school board and school budget decisions. And when the school board wants to increase funding, they put a tax measure on the ballot, and people go out and vote specifically for that tax measure. And it is the school board members who are the ones leading that effort. And in this broken system that we have, it is the school system, it is the county executive, it is everybody else who might be proposing tax increases to raise revenue, but it's left up to this body to ultimately make the decision. The system is broken. What we are trying to do in real time is fix this, and it is not easy. And I appreciate the grace in which every colleague is coming to this conversation. But I think it is extremely important to recognize the historical context of where we are and juxtapose that to the real-time decisions we are making. Because we do have tens of millions of dollars we need to find savings for, because this body has unanimously rejected a tax increase. I yield back.
And thank you for that. And that has been my point with the budget memo. We have Councilmember Krista Mink.
Thank you. I agree with Councilmember Luedtke that the budget burdens should not fall disproportionately on any one department or agency. I love to push for full funding of a school budget, but the reality is that that is not where we are at this moment, and our task is to ensure that the budget is not falling in a disproportionate way, and that we are putting forward something that is tenable, that can best serve our residents. We are not talking about hundreds of existing positions being cut from any other department or agency. This is the only one. Existing positions. That is the reality. I appreciate the transparency that the board and MCPS has worked to provide. We have done a deep dive into the base budget. We have spreadsheets. We have levels of detail that we do not have for any other department or agency's funding we look at. We have here so that we can know and understand what the impact of different funding levels will be in reality on the ground. And we are not having the same conversation about anywhere else. We are not talking about numbers that would require opening any other contracts because we have voted unanimously to fund the other contracts to ensure that Montgomery County government keeps our obligations to our union partners. But our school unions are not included in that guarantee, and the levels of cuts that are being discussed are at the level where potentially opening contracts, in addition to eliminating existing positions, is very much on the table. On that note, I think it's important to recall that our school unions came to the table last year, did as partners in good faith, made significant concessions and agreed to a 2-year agreement, which we had asked in order to have some predictability and some financial planning and so on. And we're still talking about potential funding levels, which would necessitate potentially opening those contracts because there are not enough positions that could be cut in order to quote unquote absorb some of the types of cuts that are on the table here. It would have to be both at some of these levels. So I think that's important to note. I also wanted to talk about MOE. MOE I do not think that MOE is a useful standard at this point, because we have met MOE, met or exceeded MOE. We have met that legal standard, to Councilmember Glass's point, and still we are where we are now, which is that MCPS is a smaller portion of the county budget than it has been historically, and per pupil spending is below where it was historically. And I wanted to give the superintendent a moment to speak to that, please.
Yes, and thank you. There's a lot of misconceptions about MOE, and our school system historian, S.E. McGuire, will be happy to share a timeline of MOE and its history with the council so that you can have more information about it. MOE does not take into consideration inflation. So every year is a historic budget year. Every year. Every year is a greater budget than the year before that because the cost of doing business increases every year. MOE is also not wage sensitive. And MOE does not take into consideration other state mandates that otherwise would influence the requirements to increase MOE on a day-to-day basis. So what I will say is things like the blueprint for Maryland's future that required a significant adjustment to wages was not reflected as an increase to MOE as part of the requirements, nor was the inflation that was attached to every move in the last several years as a result of that. There also have been pauses to MOE during the pandemic and at other points in MOE's history. MOE is not the end-all be-all as in terms of a measurement. Your budget should increase every year. The question, and I think it's an important one that was raised by Councilmember Lukey, is where do you match up in terms of revenue over expenditures over time, and are you matching the rate? And so this introduces a really difficult challenge and a problem for Montgomery County, that it does fall on the council to measure in the totality, and I get the frustration with the roles, I really do, but you do have to look at it in the totality of how do you keep pace with revenue and the expenditures tied to comp or anything else? Well, the really frustrating part with that is we've outpaced revenue in terms of comp, and still our educators and staff members can't afford to live in Montgomery County. So even with that outpacing, there are still real logistical challenges with making ends meet. You know, one of the other difficult things that I think oftentimes gets overlooked with MOE in particular is the requirements associated with contracts. And I'm not just talking about employee association contracts. I'm talking about contracts in general. Would we be so excited or so willing to break contracts that we have that are legally executed in other spaces? I would venture to say that we are not. So why would we consider breaking this contract? That really calls into question a lot of the concern that I think that we're trying to echo. And we don't want to diminish the fact that this is difficult and a challenge, or that the revenue to compensation rate irregularity doesn't need to be addressed. It does, all of those things. We contribute positively to the economy, and to that extent, investments in public education do yield a higher return on investment than the dollars invested. With that, you all, in a lot of ways, get to be investors. And I really appreciated the conversation that happened with some of the other agencies that were up here before, because you asked some really compelling questions about output over investment. And I love how we make out in that discussion, because our output over investment wins every day in every other situation with the county's investments. And you should be proud of that. We're proud of that. We are looking forward to increasing that output over investment. And we look forward to a very bright future. So as you're considering those proportional adjustments, I would consider that in the context of investment, and what investments you want to make in our future, and what that looks like. I also want to address one other thing, if you don't mind, Council Member, in terms of cuts. Because the cost of doing business does increase every year, we are in fact talking about real cuts. And the reason I bring it up, one, because you asked, and two, because I don't think it would serve the council, the county, the school system, or even the school system's hardworking staff and employees for us to sugarcoat or for us to hide the reality that is likely to follow with some of the decisions. And I think it's important for everyone that when you are making the tough decisions, that you make them with eyes wide open. And I don't want you to have a false sense of understanding of like where we are financially. It really is 90% of our budget is people, the people themselves, or what their compensation is. Right now, our compensation is tied up in a 2-year agreement. That is a contract, like many of our other contracts. And that really doesn't leave a lot of margin for a lot of other choices.
Thank you. Important points. And I think if there's one takeaway here, it's that I very much agree that we need to, as a council, as we make these budgetary decisions, although we are not the line item decision makers and implementation is going to fall to the board, you have come to the table transparently to explain, to give us a pretty clear understanding still of what the scale of the impacts could be, if in a relatively general, but frankly, I think specific enough sense for us to understand the decisions before us. And so we cannot wash our hands and say, MOE, we fulfilled our obligation. I think that's an important takeaway as well, because MOE is an outdated standard that does not do service to the financial realities on the ground, which is why we have continued to fund over MOE, because our school system has needed it, because it's not actually based on the costs and the needs that are on the ground. So funding over MOE while continuing to have a reduced proportional share of the county budget, while continuing to have reduced investment per pupil spending in our students, that is possible because MOE is not a standard that we should be or have been using as a way to make our final decision as a council and as a county in terms of funding. So if we continue to decrease our proportional investment in our schools, the quality of our schools is going to go down, period. And that is a decision that we are making. We cannot pass the buck to the board when we have budgetary decisions with realities associated that are laid out for us. And to me, there just has to be a level of unacceptability at which we're not going to do those types of cuts, because we are requiring, in that case, those types of results. And that's not the school system that we want to have. So I agree with Councilmember Evans that there is more to be figured out. It's a short span of time that's left here, but there's lots to figure out across the board, and a lot more discussions to be had within that relatively short period of time. But this is something that we have to figure out. We cannot have a budget that devastates our schools and carries the weight of a tough budget disproportionately on the backs of our students and of the staff who have chosen them as their life's work. I did want to make a motion that is not relevant to the larger MCPS budget. It's related to a line item that came up actually in a joint committee session that I think is just going to help honestly clarify our conversations related to the budget as we move forward. So in the April 27th joint HHS ENC committee session, the joint committee in a 3-2 vote put a reduction of $722,579 million to the MCPS budget onto the books there. I will note that with apologies, I missed this vote by about a minute. I was speaking to a district item in another committee, and had I been present, well, it's MCPS. Oh.
I was just saying that
it's not today's.
It's not today's. It's coming up tomorrow, but it does impact
the MCPS budget. So I think it's important that we address it while MCPS is here. It was kind of a two-part motion, and part of the motion impacts an item that's going to come up on Thursday, but part of the motion impacts the school budget. So that's why I want to make sure that we have the opportunity thank you.
And just for clarity,
yes.
it actually was 770,000, not 770 million. But yes.
Oh my God, did I say million?
Just
Sorry. Yes. Yes, sorry. Yes, okay, sorry.
Could solve everything right now.
Just a small tweak of hundreds of millions of dollars. No, I'm sorry, $750,000. Okay. So there is a line item reduction to the MCPS budget in the amount, I believe it's in the amount of $722,579. That is currently on our reductions list. That was, had I been present, the motion would have failed with a 3-3 vote. It was a split vote. And that motion was tied to the idea of the motion was to tie it to the George B. Thomas Learning Academy, the Saturday school, which we will be discussing on Thursday. However, that motion did not functionally impact that line item, which remains on the reconciliation list, and as it should. What it did do functionally was to put a reduction to MCPS of almost $750,000 onto the books. So my motion is going to be to remove that because right now what we have is, instead of having $179 million up for debate, we have an additional almost $1 million that is up for debate. And so however much, as we continue our discussions, however much we end up funding of MCPS off of the reconciliation list, we have this additional cut of $750,000 to consider. And I think that that's either going to confuse the MCPS budget discussions, or it's going to be treated as negligible, which I think is not fair, especially in the context of the budget scenarios and the difficult budget situation that's being discussed. So my ask is to remove. My motion is to remove that reduction, or to restore. Well, it's not a restore. Yeah, it's just to remove the reduction because it wasn't taken from anywhere. Yeah. I have a motion and a second that will then again be discussed on another day. Right? Well, no, it won't be, because the Thursday's line item, the motion did not functionally have an impact on the George B. Thomas Learning Academy. That was going on to the reconciliation list. It's still there. So okay, so I have a motion, a second. I get it now. Does anybody have any questions on this particular motion, not anything else? You do? Who has a question on this motion? Councilmember Andrew Friedson.
Well, I'll just explain it. So we had a long discussion in the Joint Committee. The discussion essentially broke down to this. The George B. Thomas Learning Academy has been funded through HHS. HHS has suggested that it be funded through MCPS. The county executive, which was confirmed by the Assistant Chief Administrative Officer in his request to the county council, assumed the moving over of the George B. Thomas Saturday School to MCPS. That was embedded in his request. My concern is that it's disingenuous for us to say we're going to restore funding for an existing service, the George B. Thomas Learning Academy, put it on the rec list, which would be very difficult to get off the rec list because, as has been discussed throughout this conversation, we have about somewhere between $100 to $190 million gap that we're going to have to address sometime this week. And so the idea of putting it on the rec list, even though it's an existing service, based on a lack of communication between HHS and MCPS, which, not here for blame, I'm just here to acknowledge the dynamic is a real serious challenge. MCPS responded, from what we were told, and said, we can't absorb it within our existing resources. And so therefore, the likely dynamic is that the George B. Thomas Saturday School is going to get cut. That's the dynamic here. So if we're treating things as same services, then we should treat it as a same service. And if the county executive was proposing this, which is what the Assistant Chief Administrative Officer in very clear terms said, if the county executive was proposing this as part of the MCPS budget and it's the same service, we should move it and make sure that it gets funded. That was the point. If we don't do that, the likelihood is there is no George B. Thomas Saturday School, number one. And number two, there's likely going to be a reduction to MCPS. The two proposals that have been proposed are the Education and Culture Committee Chair with a $30 million reduction from the increase as proposed by the county executive, and effectively a $90 million reduction as proposed by the increase, if you include, all of the various aspects to it. My point is, in that happening, I don't want there to be a reduction and to be no Saturday school, because that is a cut of an existing service, and that's not fair and that's not right, and I don't think that's transparent. So that was the reason why I put forward the proposal in the way that I did. And I think if we take the action that we're taking here, we're just postponing what the ultimate MCPS funding decision is going to be, and we're all but guaranteeing that the George B. Thomas Saturday School is not likely to get off the rec list because it's a large number, and it is being held to a different standard than every other current existing service, which would be treated as a new standard just because HHS tried to effectively move it over to MCPS. MCPS effectively said no. For whatever reason, that communication did not occur, that synapse didn't completely fire, and ultimately we're going to have a lot of students who are left behind, which I don't think is right, personally.
So thank you for the chance to illuminate.
Yes,
this.
illuminate before I
Yeah.
turn it to Councilmember Lorian Sales, who's the chair of HHS. But go ahead, illuminate.
Thank you so much. This really is an effort to save the county some money. And a better question, I think, might be, gosh, why is it set up that way? Why did you all do it that way? And so Ms. McGuire from our team will explain why we set it up the way that it's set up right now and how it saves us a few dollars.
And if you can say what the motion is, that would be great.
But we agree that we should not get rid of the Saturday school as a critical function to helping our kids without a school time.
And that is our really important starting place, which is, it was never our intent to get rid of the Saturday school, and respectfully, we did not say no, that we wouldn't take it. I want to emphasize that the amount of funding that is in the Department of Health and Human Services budget does not represent the full amount of funding that it would take if we were to take it out of there and remove it and make it into a new contract in MCPS for a few reasons. And one of them is that the Saturday school, in its incarnation with George B. Thomas, takes advantage of donations, it takes advantage of a mixed funding source, and has a funding relationship with MCPS teachers that we would not be able to recreate. And so we are happy to talk about very happy to talk about a transition with DHHS and with the council, but we would need to be very clear about the employee contract requirements, how those were being handled, and how the program would be organized and structured if it were in MCPS. One of the reasons that it had been placed in DHS to begin with really was, again, because of the different nature of the contract and the different nature of the relationship with employees that contract would generate. And DHHS had a different relationship to experience that. To implement that, apologies. MCPS does provide in-kind services through space and through an administrator and through some program assistance and materials. So we provide those resources already. Part of the idea that it could just switch over, there really are a number of other practical considerations, and we would be happy to talk those through, but we do request that everything stay the way it is for the next year, so that we can continue the services, because we do agree they're important.
Still, okay, can you still clarify what, hold on a second, hold your horses, and I'm gonna go to the chair of the committee, Lorian Sells, after this. Your motion was to reduce,
No.
to restore.
So my motion, so to be clear, my motion does not impact funding or funding recommendations for the George B. Thomas Learning Academy whatsoever. That item is on the reconciliation list because yes, that item is on the reconciliation list. It will come in front of the council for discussion, I believe, on Thursday, and I'm going to assume that we are all going to support it. So my motion was that the discussion at joint committee previously, functionally what it did was add a reduction. It put a reduction, you can see it in our tracking list, it put a reduction of the same amount to MCPS. Right. It added that as a line item. It is not tied functionally in any way. We could choose to take or not take that reduction, and you can choose to fund or not fund George, but they're separate. And I think that it will be a lot easier and make a lot more sense for us to consider the MCPS budget in the context that we have it right now, which is the 10 tranches on the reconciliation list.
Okay.
So the
noted.
motion is just to remove that reduction.
Understood now. I'm going to turn it now to the chair of the HHS committee. Go ahead.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you to my colleagues for all of their passionate remarks regarding this budget and this decision. You know, during the joint committee discussion, we wanted to ensure that the program, the after-school program, was not lost, the Saturday school. And so given the no one from MCPS was present for the discussion, and I think it's important that if we're going to transition a program, that we have all of the stakeholders in agreement, and I believe an MOU is underway. But as Ms. McGuire mentioned, it's important for us to wait until the MOU is actually fully understood by each party, so there is a smooth transition and our students are not impacted. So while I did support the MCPS reduction, I would be supportive of Councilmember Mink's amendment to ensure that we look at it in the context that it is in. There is no sense of urgency with this MOU, and I think it's important that we have to get the program right. With regards to the decision, I will hold my remarks until after the vote is taken on Councilmember Mink's amendment.
Yes, thank you so much for that. I'm going to go to Councilmember Adrian Fritzen now.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. I appreciate this is a broader conversation, not just about tutoring services and after-school programs, but about what are we asking the school system to do, and HHS, what are we asking HHS to do? And so there have been two different dynamics. Just to clarify, we talked about this quite a bit in committee, joint committee, excuse me, and the challenge has been that is a transition, and there are some tough choices and decisions and conversations that we are overdue to have, that we need to have. The challenge is this. The county executive proposed the MCPS budget to us, as was confirmed during the joint committee, assuming that the George B. Thomas Academy would be part of the MCPS budget. That was said very clearly on the record. It's not MCPS's fault for not being in that joint committee. I don't believe you were invited or asked or requested to be there, so I'm not blaming you for not being there, but do appreciate my co-chair because the context is helpful and important. I agree that there is time that needs to be taken for the MOU. I agree that there are conversations that need to be had about all of these questions of, is it fair to ask MCPS to take these on? Is it fair for HHS to do things like oversight of tutoring, which is not a health and human services function, and they're trying to get out of things that are outside of their core competency. And I think MCPS is trying to get out of the things that are beyond educating kids and providing safe, healthy, functioning environments for kids to learn and for educators to teach and for staff to work in. Here's the rub. Unless I'm misunderstanding the motion, if the motion is to put the $722,579 into the base, then the net result of this is that the school is not likely to get funded. So I just want to be clear. The school was not, let me just explain the situation. The George B. Thomas Academy was not included in the HHS budget because the assumption, as confirmed by the executive branch in public session at the joint committee, was that it was part of the MCPS request that he sent to the council. Subsequent to that, it came to light that MCPS had said, we can't absorb this within what you had provided to us. We don't have an MOU. We haven't, worked through some of the details of this, many of the things that was just shared with us today, which I totally appreciate and respect. And I'm not questioning at all, actually. Subsequently, the county executive sent a supplemental request to add this to the base budget, which would be on the reconciliation list. The challenge with that is unless it gets off the reconciliation list, this would be a cut to a current service. So I just want eyes wide open for everybody to understand what's on the table here. If this motion passes, a current service, the George B. Thomas Saturday School, will be on the reconciliation list. MCPS and the tranches that we were discussing today will all be on the reconciliation list. And ultimately, unless the $722,579 gets off the reconciliation list, it will be gone. There will be reductions likely happening to the county executive's request. A lot of things aren't going to make it off the reconciliation list, and that will be the net result of today's actions. I just want to be very clear of where the weight of this decision and what it actually means, because once that happens, it will be very difficult to reverse.
And can I add one piece of clarification? I just want to clarify also that while I appreciate that was the executive's intent, and I don't think anyone wants this program to go away, MCPS did not account for those funds in our budget. So the reduction of our budget associated with this funding as a funding source for this program, that certainly is the council's prerogative, but it does not have, like, that money is not in our budget to cut. It would just be an additional reduction.
I don't dispute
because the
that.
funding that we already have in our budget for, again, space and materials and an administrator, those funds are there. But the additional $700,000 is just an identified funding source.
Yeah, the reason why I note that is that the county executive's recommendation was to have a 6.3 cent property tax increase in order to fund the school increase, right? And his proposal, which didn't fund 100%, it funded very close to 100%, but not 100%, which leaves some things in your budget that weren't fully funded. The intention and the expectation that the county executive did when he sent over his budget, as confirmed by his representatives at our meeting, was that this was included in that. So I understand where you're coming from, but this would be slightly less than 100% of what you had requested in your budget. I'm just noting that if we move forward here, everybody has said we want this program to continue. We don't want to reduce it. The net result of it is it likely will.
And Councilmember, we can appreciate that, but to Councilmember Glass's point, that's not how this works. When the county executive can't just arbitrarily add items to the school system's budget without the Board of Education approving.
As we talked about last week with the HVACs.
So,
we don't have the authority.
I appreciate the effort, but
just to be clear, I am very much agreeing with that, which is why I'm saying we should make sure that this, if we don't want this Saturday school to be eliminated, then we should fund it, and we should fund it specifically. That's my point.
Okay, I'm gonna ask everyone to, let's take a 1 second. Yeah, 1 second. Councilmember Will Jawando.
Thank you so much. And there's a lot going on here. I was the other co-chair, by the way. Let's just be clear. It was not Councilmember Friedson. It was the EC-HHS committee. I know he's new to the HHS committee, but we were the chairs. My full committee wasn't present. I objected to even the taking of the vote because Councilmember Mink was upstairs at T&E trying to argue for her district. It would have failed if she tried to have her vote recorded and it was denied. So that's the context here too. Separate and apart from that, this makes absolutely no sense because the money, even if this motion were to fail, it's just a reduction to MCPS's budget and does not fund the program. We all want the program. My kids are in the program. I love the program. It's a great program. The county executive should have included it in his initial budget submission. He did not. Then he followed up with the supplemental in the HHS budget, which is $500 million. I have given a detailed analysis of 81 cuts. We can find this money in HHS's budget if we all think it's a priority. And that would be my suggestion of what we should do to keep it going. And because to say it's some theoretical school system money that doesn't exist, their whole budget, their whole increase is on the rec list. So to add more money, it just doesn't make any sense. So, and I just want to ask Mr. Howard, my understanding is that even whether this stands or not, the money would still need to come off the rec list to support George B. Thomas, correct?
Correct. So the executive sent this over as an amendment to his operating budget, $722,000 and change. So per our protocols, any kind of executive amendments automatically go on the rec list items, and it is showing that way. Separately, there's a second item on the rec list coming out of the joint committee, which was a reduction in a corresponding amount to MCPS. While the committee talked about those as kind of linked items, they are two separate items on the rec list and would require two separate decisions by the council.
I appreciate that. And also, MCPS did not submit or currently envision or currently have the money to support the system. So it would
Correct.
just be a net reduction
Correct.
on top of the reductions we're already considering. So the argument that, well, you're going to reduce anyway, let's reduce you some more, doesn't solve the problem of the actual George B. Thomas coming out of the HHS budget as it currently is, which is actually operating as a savings to the school, to the
By a
students,
lot.
to the students that it serves. So I think we should remove this and separate it, and then work with the HHS committee to find adjustments within their budget where this program is funded to keep it going. I am in support of that, but I am not in support of what was done at the joint committee. Thank you, Madam President.
Okay, so we have a motion that was just stated again by Councilmember Wiljowondo. And I only want to have people who want to speak on this motion. I have Councilmember Kate Stewart. Go ahead.
Thank you, and I appreciate, since I was not in the joint committee, and I appreciate all my colleagues for clarifying this. It seems to me that since the county executive sent over a supplemental or a change, an amendment, that the motion makes sense. I understand Councilmember Friedson where you're coming from, but I think if he hadn't sent over that amendment so now that it's on the rec list, then we would have had to do the accounting of where's the money coming from and this balancing. But because it's an amendment coming over from the county executive that automatically goes on our rec list, I think it makes he's adjusting. Basically, the county executive has adjusted for his mistake by sending over. This is more of a question. Quite frankly, I'm trying to work through this, but it seems to me, since he sent over the amendment to the operating budget, the county executive is recognizing he made a mistake. Right.
Yeah, humans do that.
And that it should not, and that he was accounting for it when he couldn't, because he doesn't have that authority in the MCPS budget. So he corrected that mistake by sending over the amendment with, according to our processes, automatically goes on the rec list. So the Saturday program is on the rec list now to be added back into our operating budget, but doing anything to MCPS doesn't make sense anymore. So that should go away. Is my understanding of how the conversation has gone.
So, council member, that does solve 50% of the problem, which it solves the MCPS side of the problem.
Right, and then we'll deal with HHS on Thursday.
And then the bigger question is if it's the intent of council to preserve the George B. Thomas Learning Center funding, then that is a separate issue.
Yeah.
That's it. And the next person I have on my list is Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I was not at the joint committee, and at this moment, I'm very glad I was not at the joint committee. I have heard many times that everybody says, I want to be very clear. The only thing that's very clear here is we're not very clear. So right now, just so I understand, right now, the George B. Thomas School, which has been in existence for many years and has a wonderful program, and George B. Thomas was a wonderful person as well, is in the HHS budget. Is that correct? And with this motion that Councilmember Mink has proposed, where would the George B. Thomas School end up?
It doesn't affect that line
it at
item.
all.
It doesn't affect that line item at all, because what came out of joint committee was putting a reduction to MCPS onto our list. It didn't impact the George B. Thomas Learning Academy line item at all. I know that the intent of Councilmember Friedson was to guarantee funding, was to guarantee that line item for George B. Thomas made it through the reconciliation process. There's not a mechanism in our process for doing that, so it continues to live on the reconciliation list, and I know that as a council we will be doing our best to try to secure funding for that. So my motion was solely to remove the the reduction to MCPS, which is what functionally that motion at joint committee.
All right, and if
did.
it's removed from MCPS, where does the George B. Thomas school budget reside?
It exactly where it is right now, which is on the HHS, on the rec list under HHS. So whether or not I make this motion, whether or not this motion passes, the George B. Thomas Learning Academy is the exact same outcome, which is that it is on the rec list under HHS. So this motion does not impact George B. Thomas Learning Academy at all. It's solely to remove the reduction to the MCPS budget that was added.
Councilmember
that-
Katz, you're
how does that
asking the
help?
right question, which is why.
Yeah.
So the George B. Thomas is a joint budget item. The funding, the explicit funding for the main part of the contract is in DHHS. There is in-kind services that are in MCPS. We provide space, we
Appreciate
provide
that.
administrator, and we provide materials. So there's funding associated with that, but it's really in-kind educational support. Years and years and years ago, when this was first created, the decision was made to place it in DHHS in large part because of contract, legal, and other structures that made sense for DHHS to operate that partnership with that organization, and that would be complicated if it came to MCPS to implement that. We're happy to have those conversations in an updated, this day and age way, but we can't do it over the summer and we need to work through some very specific issues before we would take on that transition. So we're happy to do that, but it is not possible in this exact moment, and we don't have any funding to do it. And so the decision had been made, again, many years ago, for HHS to handle the contractual partnership part of the arrangement and for MCPS to provide in-kind services, largely because of the structure of the program, the structure of the partnership, the other donations that the organization brings to the table. There's a number of pieces there that we would not want to disrupt with an abrupt transition to MCPS, which would change the structure of the program.
So, bottom line, so I understand, I don't know that I'll ever understand this, but, so bottom line, so I understand this motion does not affect whether or not there's going to be a Saturday school this Saturday.
That's correct.
Or after,
Has
for this budget.
absolutely no impact on it. Two completely separate line items and conversations at this point. The conversations are linked because as a matter of content area they are. But in terms of our process, there already is and will remain a line item on the rec list for George B. Thomas. We will be talking about it on Thursday. And now there is also a line item for reduction to MCPS in the same amount, which I would say does not really further our conversations about the MCPS budget. And so the motion is to remove that reduction, which has no impact on George B. Thomas.
Do you agree with Councilmember Mink on this?
Yes, Councilmember Mink is illuminating just a further reduction that to the discussion that we're having today. And so, yes.
And bottom line is, all I care about, candidly, is that the George B. Thomas School continue. Whatever way we figure this thing out, it needs to. It's a good program. So, thank you.
Sydney, you and I were there when it was started, but I'm
Yes.
telling you, this is a priority for us. But I think what we're talking about is, it sounds like all your colleagues are on board with you, as they should be, because this is a great program.
Yeah.
What we're not in agreement is to being penalized because we are counting every penny that we can have. So by reducing that almost by $1 million, it has an impact on us, but not on the program.
I got you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we're all clear right now. I know there are more folks who want to speak on this. I'm going to turn it first to Council Vice President Balcom, and then you. She was before you. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. It helps to look at the reconciliation list, the tracking sheets. So we have committee reduction of 722, and then we have an item on the county executive budget for 722. we have to, it sounds to me, I wasn't at the committee, but it sounds to me like the error was in the county executive not funding this program in MCPS. So MCPS is unfair. Oh, no, in either one. In either one, right? Right. It sounds like it was just a mistake. He didn't do it in HHS. He didn't give you the money in MCPS. And so I agree with the motion, but I would like you to clarify the motion. And what is the motion?
The motion, and please feel free to jump in to add any clarity that would be helpful, but the motion is to remove the reduction to MCPS in the amount of $722,000 and change, to remove that from our tracking sheet, take that off of the table, and so that the scale of funding or reductions that we are going to be looking at for MCPS is maintained within that $179 million framework. Mm-hmm. And my motion will have absolutely no impact on the George B. Thomas Learning Academy and how that appears or is decided within the context of the rest of the budget.
So I agree with the motion. I just want to clarify. I know that I shouldn't use the word clarify, but so assuming that we take that off, and then assuming we fund the Learning Center, that's one that it's a double hit, right? It's a 1.4 million to our budget, because if we fund the George B. Thomas Center at 722, and we restore a reduction of 722. Craig?
Yes, it would hit our tracking in two different ways. One would be you would no longer have a reduction of $722,000, and then if the council made a decision to fund that, that would be $722,000, less that you have to fund somewhere else. But to think about it, it's the main point is the council will still have to decide whether to fund George B. Thomas at a cost of $722,000 amongst all the other items that you'll have to deliberate and debate through.
Okay, but I think that we have to correct the mistake that was made for MCPS. I agree with that. Can I just briefly talk about when we don't know where this is going to end up, whether it's going to stay in HHS or move over to MCPS in the long run? I do have concerns about that, just because I would hope that MCPS would look at this in a much broader area to say, if MCPS is going to take over the Saturday school, is this the Saturday school that they should take over, and how many other Saturday schools for parity, and then the additional cost to run it. So I don't think for me, it wouldn't be a simple decision of just, we'll take it over and we'll pay our people more, right? I think it's a strategic decision, an academic decision that has to be made, and I know that you would do that, but not just assume, okay, we'll take it. So those were my thoughts.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Evan Glass. No more anymore. Okay, good. I think everybody. Okay, if you're speaking still on this motion, raise your hand. You're still on the motion, Councilmember Andrew Friesen.
Okay, I just want to be very clear. The motion that the Joint Committee made was to include this in the base. If the council president and council staff are saying that it cannot be included in the base, that wasn't the motion. So the confusion here is actually on that part of it. Councilmember Mink and I are not in disagreement. The agreement on this is that if it has to still be on the rec list, then I don't agree with the MCPS reduction either. The whole point here was that I don't believe that the $722,000 for the George B. Thomas School should be on the reconciliation list if it's a same services request. That is the point. The only way that I thought would be appropriate to do that without having a budget impact and without making our process not function properly was to assume what the county executive was trying to fix, with his own error and lack of communication between HHS and MCPS, which was, if we were going to include it in the base, it had to come out of somewhere. And if he had already assumed it, which was confirmed in the Joint Committee and MCPS, and then we'd have to take up the rest of these conversations later. If that is not being allowed, if the council president is suggesting, and I would like clarification on this, the council president is suggesting that it has to be on the rec list anyway, then I don't think anybody was suggesting the MCPS reduction, because that was not what the motion was. The motion very clearly was a two-part motion, was that the money was moved into the wrong place and needed to be moved back. If that is not allowed and has to be on the rec list anyway, then the MCPS cut shouldn't be there. I agree with that, and I would support the motion. Or I think the council president is just saying that you're not going to allow the motion and just don't allow it.
Let the council president speak. I'm gonna jump in right now, and just so we can end this. And I thank you for the comments, and I can feel the frustration because, and honestly, I don't like when I have to say anything to criticize the county executive. Believe it or not, I don't enjoy it. But this is another reason why I have to, again, this whole mess came from that office, okay? So this is simple. If this is a program that has been going on for years, it obviously should have been going to the base. It goes to the base, but that's not today's discussion. Today's discussion has nothing to do with HHS because that's where the program is. On Thursday, we'll deal with that. Today, we are only dealing with removing this item from the MCPS budget because it shouldn't have been there. Okay, so no, as removing it, yes. So I think the motion was clear and it has been second. Do you need to speak again, council member? No, I think, okay, so we have a motion and a second, and then we talk about placing it on the base budget on Thursday with HHS. All those in favor, please raise your hand. It passed unanimously. Thank you, council member Mick. You know, I've never been in that school, and now I'm gonna have to, just because of this. We're gonna continue. Next I have council member Kate Stewart.
I feel like the moment has passed a little bit. That detour we took for the Saturday school, but I appreciate the clarification. I just want to, and I won't take long because it's been a long day, and I know you all have had very long days. I do want to go back to and just thank Councilmember Evans for her remarks and her thoughtfulness. And that's what it's going to take, and it's going to take collaboration. The truth is that when we look at our reconciliation list right now and we look at the gap we have, there aren't enough reductions to take. Like, it's not there in what we can take. And so we need to work together to figure out how we're going to piece this together. We've done that in the past, and I know we can do it again this year. And the thing about each year, it does get tougher and tougher. And unfortunately, the unknowns, we thought last year was rough and a lot of unknowns. But what our community is also facing this year are a lot of unknowns. And we know, and one of the reasons we've all said, and I think Councilmember Balcom said it best, that the council did not move forward with the county executive's property tax increase because we have heard loud and clear from residents about what they're facing right now with gas prices, with rents, with their mortgages and everything else. We honestly had folks sit before us or call our office who say, please don't raise property taxes, but please fully fund the schools and fully fund all the other asks. And they will admit, we know that's impossible, but this is what we want you to do. And so I think, today is Tuesday. We have a number of days left to figure this out. And I just wanted to say I appreciate my colleagues and MCPS and the school board and all the work that we need to do over the next couple of days. But I am just a little concerned as I look at those numbers of where we are going to be able to come together. And so I just wanted to say I really appreciate it, and again, appreciate our staff, and want to keep the conversation going on figuring out how we meet all the needs of our community right now. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Councilmember Suhujawando, then Glass, and then I'm going to go back to Councilmember Lori Sells. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate comments of all my colleagues and Councilmember Stewart getting us back on track for the main discussion here, and appreciate your comments. I just I want to make a couple comments and then ask just one question of the superintendent, and then I'll be done. I agree this is difficult. It's one of the reasons I think what is, as far as history I've been able to look, an unprecedented move of suggesting $70 million in cuts to other government agencies that are not MCPS. And I also suggested a $30 million reduction, which is not without pain, to MCPS. And to try to avoid, in addition to some other items that colleagues I know probably don't agree with or don't like, and using reserves and OPEB and a number of things to get to a budget that doesn't raise property taxes. And that's fine. We don't have to agree on every item. I did it in large part to show I do think it's possible to fund the core services, to honor the contracts, to support our nonprofits, to support our school system, to support our most vulnerable without raising the property tax. Now, is that going to be a solution we can do every year? No. We have things we have to do going forward, and we've gone through this process. We're on day 2, where I have been making motions to reduce things from the budget that are based on that list. Some have passed, some have come up, some have not worked out, and I hope we can continue. There's some big ones still coming that we haven't discussed yet. But there is a path forward, and I just really I hope we can find it, because we have to. And outcomes. We talk about outcomes. We've seen improvement in some areas in reading for certain grade groups. We just had the testing just now. A couple of my kids just finished their MAP testing, their MCAT testings. I think I'm fingers crossed. You can comment if you have any news to make, but I think we're going to continue to see improvement. And we made investments last year. And I want to thank Council President Stewart for helping those investments happen with what we did in the budget last year. We put a bunch of special educators in the schools. We did a whole bunch of other things, and it's going to pay dividends. It's not rocket science here, or it is I'm sure there's a rocket science class in MCPS somewhere, but we have to invest. And that was going to be my one question. And we have to have oversight, and we have to invest in what works. And I commend the superintendent and the school board for 2 years in a row going into the base. That has not happened. I've been on the Education Culture Committee 8 years. That has not happened in other years in that way. Reducing by 41 positions this year, and I don't know how many last year, but it was significant in the base budget. Talk the percentage of the budget. You came from Virginia, Superintendent Taylor. We talked about this. How much are we spending, right? Because this is a meta question in the return on investment. We're a little under 50% now. And in Sterling, Virginia, use wherever you want. How much are they spending of their budget on education? Places we compare ourselves.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. It's like comparing apples to zebras. It really is that different. In 25 years in Virginia school systems, they look very similar on the surface, but they are very different in practice. And a lot of it has to come down to classification of positions. For example, classroom touching positions in Virginia schools are included in what is called a state standards of quality, where they are state staffing standards, minimum expectations, and they are ascribed as school positions. In Maryland, they are classified, and in Montgomery County, they're classified as central office positions, which gives the appearance as though our central office is much larger than it really is. The people who actually show up to central services largely perform critical operational functions like payroll, HR, and some curriculum development support and professional learning support. but the lion's share of folks that are ascribed to central services are actually out in the field at schools. So a lot of what this looks like in application is very, very different. Some of the expectations as well tied to capital improvements are also very different. Capital improvements in Virginia are an entire local responsibility. There are no state dollars for capital improvements in Virginia, at least not beyond the lending aspect of a statewide literary fund that's used for lending. In terms of dollar to dollar, it's equitable. You look at our nearest comparison school district is Fairfax County. They spend a little less per pupil than we do, but they also have different requirements, and they also don't have the blueprint for Maryland's future. So they really are very different dynamics, both in the expenditure and on the revenue side, that generate different results.
We're not wildly different. Yeah, and so I appreciate that. And these are obviously straw votes that we're taking. We're going to have to go back and figure it out. But there is a path forward. We can do this, and I think we have to do it. Thank you, Madam President.
There's definitely a path forward, and challenging everybody here to think about how to cut and how to reduce our funding so we can support all these different essential elements that run this county was the whole reason why I asked council members to let's push the envelope and see what kind of changes do we need to make. And understanding that if we don't have a property tax increase, these are all the consequences. And so yes, it was not easy to put forward some suggestions so people can start thinking about these issues. And I appreciate not just those council members who put something in paper for us to discuss, but also the ones who reach out to me and wanted me to know exactly what kind of ideas they have for reductions. So it will take a village to get us through this, and we will get through this. With that, the last person I have here to speak is Council Member Lori Ann Sells. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to Superintendent Taylor and the board leadership and all the stakeholders who have engaged us over the week since the county executive released his budget. This decision is no different from the decisions we've had to make every year with regards to ensuring that the folks that we are entrusting with preparing the future leaders, the folks that we're entrusting with ensuring we attract the right mix of businesses to have a robust economy, are the same people that we are asking to sacrifice being able to afford to live close to where they work so that we can balance the budget. I don't have kids in MCPS, but I know how important it is to ensure that we keep the educators that we have there, not just those in the classrooms, not just the principals, but the support staff. And those tranches that, we are going to have to make a decision on. We can't look at them as just numbers. We have to know that we are making a decision on whether we are going to have crowded classrooms, whether we are going to have educators in crowded classrooms without a paraeducator, without a support staff, doubling up on classes, not having enough time for planning. All of this is going to trickle down and erode the progress that we're making with the blueprint. So I know we have difficult decisions and a lot of items on this reconciliation list, but we have to remember that at the end of the day, this is more than just about numbers. We're trying to build a strong economy, and if we are not conscious of who we're trying to build this stable future for and the opportunities that exist when we have educators in the classroom who are passionate about the work that they're doing and who feel valued in how they are compensated for the work that they are doing. And it's not just teaching. We're asking our educators to be, check in with our students and ensure that they are socially and emotionally prepared to take on the rigors of this challenging curriculum at school. And so as we're just thinking about how to fund this budget in the next few days, I just want us to think about the frontline staff and the essential workers who are doing this work and who these cuts are going to impact the most, and ultimately our children. And so I just want to make sure that the decisions we make are ultimately going to support them. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see anybody else wanting to speak. So just to be absolutely clear here, the motion will be on the Education and Culture Committees. They recommended accepting the county executive's reductions to the Technology Modernization Project. It's included there. I don't think it was mentioned, but I wanted to make sure it's on the record. The amendment that we made with the motion that Councilmember Mink stated, that we all agreed on, and then, no, we do know, hey, we know what it was. And then the committee unanimously agreed to place the full county executive recommended local funding increase of $179 million to the reconciliation list, and it will be on tranches of 10%. Okay, making sure that's absolutely clear. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And it passed unanimously. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all tomorrow. We are adjourned.